Hello, I'm Jay from Volunteer Audio. Today I'm making a video covering our new 2025 Harley Davidson Road Glide CVO ST. This is our demo bike, and in it we're going to put a new Cicada audio system. This is the CXK series speakers, my personal favorite, and I'm going to go in great depth to everything it takes to put this in this bike, all plug and play, using the Volunteer Audio SeirenHD A to B interface. 2,000 watts continuous power. This system's going to rock. You're going to think it's amazing, so you need to watch the rest of the video, get to the end, and tell what it sounds like. Hang out with us for the rest of the build. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what we're going to put in this bike today. Starting off with our front fairing speakers. This is the CXK carbon fiber 6.5-inch mid. This thing's going to give us great mid bass, tremendous amounts of clarity, and it handles 250 watts of continuous power. And we're using 4-ohm speakers for this build. I love 4-ohm speakers. It doesn't overheat our amplifier. It gives us much more ability to do things like maybe adding bag woofers off the rear of the amp or additional speakers. We can run up to 8 speakers if we're going 4-ohm. Don't fall for always needing 2-ohm. That's not really the case. On the fairing, we're going to be changing out our grills to some Cicada grills that in that is going to get a Cicada tweeter. So we are going to be mounting a tweeter in the grill in the fairing. We'll be going over that with you as well. This is a true component set. We're separating our mid bass. It's going just to the 6.5. Treble's just going to the tweeter. It's going to give us better overall sound and a lot better power handling and control. Onto our amplifier. So let's first talk about batteries. This is a huge build. This factory battery that's in this bike is only going to be 400 cranking amps. And that 400 amp rating is only for so many seconds while starting the engine. It's not a continuous use. We're moving up to a Titan 8 battery from Excess Power. This is lithium titanate technology. It's good to up to 5,000 watt system. This amplifier we're using in this build is an FLX 2000.4. It's going to pull over 100 amps of current at full tilt. To be able to do that on a 70 amp charging system, this lithium battery has to make that up. And with lithium titanate, it charges so fast that between bass notes, between those high points in the music, it's going to recharge itself so fast, and it's going to make it where our amp works. This is not optional. This is required. If you put a huge amplifier on a factory battery, you will starve that amp for power and you will make it fail. So all the Volunteer Audio packages you see for the 24 and ups with these parts are going to make sure that you know that battery upgrade is a required upgrade. Now this amp, 2,000 watt 0.4. That's 2,000 watts continuous power in certain scenarios. So this amplifier bridge down can actually do 1,000 watts by 2. At 2 ohm, it's going to do 500 watts by 4 RMS. In this case, on our 4 ohm install, remember the speakers are 250 RMS, and at 4 ohm, this is going to do 300 watts continuous power to each speaker. I like to overpower them slightly, gives us more headroom, and it gives us the ability to adjust that EQ and that DSP where it's going to sound its best without losing volume. We're also going to be using 4-gauge power wire. So in this, we cannot use 8-gauge. We have to use proper size wire. And in our kits are going to be 4-gauge oxygen-free wire from the battery up to the front. And let's not forget about our interface. The SeirenHD HD A to B 8 interface. This module allows us to remove that factory amp, put in a much larger amplifier, but on board is a DSP. It's not just a DSP, it's a DSP that's communicating with that infotainment system digitally through A to B. So we have the ability to retain every factory option. That means that EQ in the radio can still be adjusted, and it will adjust inside of here without having to get a computer out and mess with your DSP to try to make those changes. We also keep auto speed volume and every other factory option. Fader's going to work. All the factory EQs work, auto speed volume works, and if you have factory subwoofers, this interface can retain those as well. Now, I would tell you the factory subs are not great, so I would upgrade to something a lot better, and in a later video, we'll be doing that to this bike as well as a next step. But our interface from Volunteer Audio and SeirenHD is the best on the market, and the only one that's going to allow you to keep all those factory features. We have a 31-band parametric EQ on every channel. So Volunteer Audio is going to tune this perfectly, using an RTA, using this bike before it ships to you. So when you get it, it's a simple plug-and-play install, and you don't need a degree in audio engineering to set everything up. We're going to do those hard parts for you. Now on the rear, we're going to be using the 24 CHD lid kit. So we're going to be cutting in those lids, installing a 6x9 cutting kit, and we're going to be moving on to the 6x9 inch. This is a CM694 6x9 carbon fiber cone, 250 watts RMS. It's going to give us good mid bass. We're going to be installing this tweeter bridge on top, dropping in a tweeter in the back, so we have a component set front and rear in this install. Now, some people are going to do just a 6x9 mid. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But the only reason we do that is if we thought we had too much treble. And in our DSP, we're going to perfectly tune it where it's not going to be ear piercing. It's going to have a very full tone, but it's going to be so loud, louder than your ears can handle. Moving on, we're going to be using our Extreme Audio amp mounting bracket to mount that amp in the fairing and the A to B module as well. We'll go over crossover setup, all of these different things as we do the install. So you definitely want to follow along for those highlights. Also, one last thing, in the fairing, to get the best sound out of these front speaker pods, we're going to go one step further and put in a SoundSkin sound dampening kit. That's going to make our pods, where they're tighter, they don't vibrate as much, and the mid bass from these speakers are projected toward us instead of being lost in the vibration of those pods. This is a very important part. It's not a lot of money. And if you're going to do all of this, let's take it all the way and get the best possible sound. All right, so let's move on to the bike. Let's get this thing installed. All right, so first step of any install is always going to be protecting the bike, making sure we don't damage it. That's definitely not the point. We definitely don't want to mess it up trying to make it better. So we're going to put a fender protector on our front fender. This is just going to protect if you were to drop that screwdriver or anything else from dinging off that paint, leaving a dent in the front. We don't want that to happen. Also, make sure you get a bolt organizer, a tray, something, a can, I don't care what it is. Put your bolts in it. Make sure they're arranged in a way that when you get done, you know they've all been put back in. That's when we know we're finished and we get to listen to the system. So let's get going. We're going to use a T25 Torx. We're going to start pulling the fairing off of this bike. So let's start up here at the windshield. You're going to have a total of 4 bolts around the outside that are T25. Start taking those out. And each one of these is going to have a little rubber bushing behind it. We're going to make sure that we keep up with those rubber bushings and put those back in. That protects that bolt from scratching that windshield. Once you've done that, the windshield just slides out of these 2 hooks. All right, so now that just exposed 6 more bolts. So it's 3 on each side under the windshield. Just holds these little the mount for the windshield onto this outer fairing. Same T25 Torx. So this is a road glide. Some of these steps are going to be very similar on a street glide, but not the same. So definitely you want to watch the street glide videos, or you will end up breaking some of this plastic doing it in the way the road glide is done. All right, now from this side, this trim that goes around this vent has to be pulled toward us. So just grab it with your fingers, pull forward. It's going to release these 2 clips that you couldn't see. We're going to set that over to the side now. Now that just made it where this piece of plastic is now loose. So just take it, slide it forward, make sure these 2 hooks keep up with those because they could actually fall out, and set this over to the side. Next, we're going to take our T25 and we're going to remove a couple bolts in the inner fairing here at the bottom. So there's actually 2 on each side, but we're only going to remove the lower one on each side of this inner fairing. Do the same thing on the other side. We're just going to take a panel removal tool, a pry tool, something that's not going to damage the paint, and we're going to go in behind the upper portion of the speaker grill. Now at the bottom of the grill, there are 2 little legs that are wrapped around this inner fairing. We don't want to break those, so we're not prying at the bottom, only at the top. So with my hand on the bottom, holding it in, I'm going to take something and just pull out at the top, release into 2 factory clips. Once those 2 clips have been undone, these are still intact and not broke. We're going to set this to the side. Now we're going to use new grills, but we definitely don't want to break those factory ones because there's always value in these parts if you want to sell them used after the fact. Same thing on the other side now, just pulling out from the top. And this little tool is called an ultimate pry tool, but there's a whole bunch of different variations you could use for this. All right, so at this point, we are going to pull the 2 screws out from behind those grills. So we expose those in the bottom corner. Same T25 Torx can be used for this as well. One out here and one out on the other side. All right, now back to the front where our outer fairing is. There's only 4 more bolts holding us in. We're going to take the 2 that are going straight down here. We're going to remove those on each side of this vent area. Now the last 2 bolts. So we have to be aware that when these come off, the fairing could fall off. So we're going to use our body, put a little pressure on it, holding it in place while we remove the 2 upper Torx bolts. All right, so now that I've got both those out, I'm just going to take our fairing. On the front, you may have to lift out just a little on each side to get it to clear. Once you've done that, you can just slide it forward and take it all the way off. Just like that. All right, so we're going to continue removing parts off the bike. Before we start going back together, we got to get it all apart. We're going to go and remove our seat. The CVOST's got a solo seat with this little cover in the back where the passenger would have been. So we're going to remove this thumb screw. And then we're just going to slide this out from our solo seat. Now under our seat, we have 2 more bolts that we're just going to untwist and remove. These aren't too tight. Sometimes you've got to get a wrench the right size to get these out. This is a nice seat. A lot of times I worry because it's so simple for somebody just with their hands to remove it. Robert Becker actually makes a really nice seat lock for these, for the solo seats or even for the full seats. You can check those out at volunteeraudio.com. If you're worried about somebody stealing your seat, and you probably should be at some of these big rallies, you definitely want to pick up some of those locks. That'll make that where that's not possible. Just going to lift up on our seat, slide it backwards, remove it. All right, so one of the first things we want to do before we get too far in is we want to pull that fuse before we unplug all our electrical connectors. Turn your ignition on so your bike is on. Pull the side panel out. I've got my bag out here so that you can see this better. Pull this fuse cover and just pull the fuse while the key's on. At that point, you have disengaged the alarm. We're just going to cut the ignition off, and we're ready to continue on with our build without risking turning on a check engine light or making it think we've tipped it over as we pull our BCM off later. All right, so next we're going to remove the gas tank. Now this part scares a lot of people. It's very simple. Harley's got a disconnect on the fuel line that once you unplug the fuel line, it doesn't leak fuel. And I know the fuel part's what scares you. This isn't going to be hard, so just follow along. We're going to start by disconnecting this vent at the back of the gas tank. So it's just a little rubber portion here that you're just going to slide the inner rubber out, or the inner plastic out of it. It's a brand new bike, so this is pretty tight. Let's see. There we go. Let's pull it out like that. Now up here at the front of the gas tank, there's another one. You'll see that there is one with a clamp on it. We're not undoing the clamped line. We're undoing this one that does not have the clamp. So just pull out like that. Now we're going to take a 13 millimeter socket. In this case, it's on a Milwaukee battery ratchet. In reverse, we're going to remove these 2 bolts at the base of the gas tank. Now up at the front of the gas tank, up here, you're going to see there's a little rubber cover on each side covering up some of the bolts. This is what that cover looks like. You simply just grab a hold of it, pull out, it's going to come off. There's one on each side. It's going to expose 2 more bolts at the front of the gas tank. Now, this can be a little tricky to get into, so I may move my wheel over so you can see a little better. We're going to come up through this direction. We'll do the same thing on the other side. So it's got your air intake, so there's even less room. All right, so we've got one more electrical connector under the gas tank. So if you get down here under the tank and follow right next to the fuel disconnect, you'll see a plug-in. If you follow that over to the bottom of the gas tank, you can reach your hand under and you can find that plug. There's a little button on it you push, and then you slide the plug out. So I'll get it disconnected and I'll show you that in a little greater detail here. All right, so here's that plug. You're just pushing up on this button and pulling out at the same time. All right, so now we're just going to disconnect this fuel line. This is simple. You're going to take this chrome sleeve and you're going to slide it up like that, and then you bring the line down. You might get a couple drips of fuel, but it is going to shut the fuel off, so it's no longer going to continue to drip. All right, so as you continue on, this line that we disconnected is actually under the tank, and it's clipped into 2 places on the side of the frame rail under the gas tank. So I'm just going to take my gas tank and I'm going to lift it up a little, and I'm going to follow up to where that goes, and I'm just going to unclip it from the 2 places where it's at. All right, so I've got both of those unclipped now. I'm just going to take my gas tank, lift it up, making sure that none of these lines are stuck. I had one under a piece of plastic up front here. And I can set it over to the side. All right, so I know you couldn't see what I was just doing, but that little plastic line that ran up through here was just snapped into here. So I was reaching under, I was pulling up on this while pulling the line down. Unclipping both those. When I go back together, normally I will stand these, I'll spin them around. When I go to put the tank on, I'll bring that line over and I'll just snap them right back in. All right, so next step, we're gonna go ahead and remove this cover under the gas tank. We call this our backbone of the motorcycle, and this is where all the factory wiring is. There's a couple zip ties here that I'm gonna cut. There's another one down here at the back. We're gonna cut each one of these. These are just there for going down the assembly line. They want all this to stay together. Now they're not needed, but they are keeping us from running our wiring. So we're gonna go ahead and take this, just pull each one of these out. Just they'll let us take them out. There we go. Next thing, they actually run some tape. We call this Tessa tape. It's an automotive grade tape around this. And we're gonna cut this side of it so that we can peel this tape off. There's 3 places on this one. And if somebody's ran wiring before, you may not have to do this step. This being a brand new bike, nobody's ever been into this portion of it before. Okay, so now we're ready to just take these little clips. We're gonna pry out on them, releasing that top cover. Now I'm just gonna kind of wiggle and work my way toward the front. Now this is your anti-lock brake lines. They do have to come out of this cover. So you're gonna push that, bring them over to the side to where they're clear now. Continue to work this off, and now you'll see that's where all that original wiring goes. We're gonna lay our power and ground wire in here, running up into our fairing, and then this is gonna go back on. We're not gonna run it up beside because it could fall on the engine, it could overheat. We wanna do this like Harley would do it in the most secure location. All right, so now that we got our gas tank off, we got that backbone exposed, we're gonna move back to the front, we're gonna take our headlight out. So in this case, we are going to be removing a total of 6 bolts, 2 at the bottom of the headlight, 2 that are a little hard to see up in here, and 2 that are exposed. Now, we did a previous video where we actually installed these turn signals and daytime running lights from Custom Dynamics. If you want to know more about those, watch that video. But for now, we're just going to get this headlight out. It's going to give us room to run the wiring we need from the battery up to our new amplifier. So let's start here at the bottom. This is a T27, not a T25. And we're just going to undo both of these lower screws. Now from the factory, the headlight wiring actually runs over the top, into here, back around, under, and into the back. Makes no sense. So when we did the last video, I showed you how, and you could do this easily. Once you unplug that wiring at the end, feed it back down through the hole it's coming through, leave it behind the headlight. You'll see the way that is when we get to that point. But I don't like leaving that bunch of wiring up top that doesn't need to be there. Next, we want to move to the 2 screws that are on inside. So if you look down through here, you'll see those next bolts that I'm going after. Another one on this side. And we got the 2 more on the top. Now don't worry about the 2 bolts falling there because we're going to get those in a second once we get the headlight loose. Now I'm holding a little pressure in on the headlight while I remove this last bolt. Make sure it doesn't fall out on our fender. All right, so now that I've got the last bolt out, I can pull this headlight toward me. And I can unplug the headlight. There's another little black button on the bottom. You press it up and then slide it out, just like so. All right, so now we're going to move on to removing that factory amp. This being a CVOST, it's going to have the black 500 watt factory amp. Now, if you watched our previous videos where we tested this, it said it did 125 watts at 2 ohm. It only did about 78, so it's nowhere near enough power to make us happy with our system. And if you have that really small silver amp, it's supposed to be 200 watts, it did a little over 30 watts to each speaker. So that's why you can't hear it at highway speeds. That's why you're probably doing this upgrade. But we're going to go ahead and take this out. It's really simple. There's only one plug that goes to the amp. There's a little red retainer that we're going to push, unlocking it, and then we're going to press down on this little black button and try to work our wiring backwards. Now, at this point, a lot of times you don't have enough room to really unplug it, so I'm going to go ahead and take the 4 bolts out that are holding it down. Again, this is our T27 torque screwdriver. We're going to retain these screws because we're going to be mounting a new amp mounting plate with these 4 bolts to hold our new amplifier. From 500 peak watts to almost 4,000 peak watts. This is going to be a huge difference in our total output. All right, so now we've got our amp loose. We can press that little button and we can wiggle and unplug this from the amp. All right, we're going to be installing SoundSkin sound dampening material, but we're also doing a component set. So there's a little bit more to this than just swapping a speaker out. So we want to pull these front speaker pods off the bike. If you were doing a basic coaxial, you could probably do this through the hole without pulling it, but we're taking this to the next level. Bigger speakers, more wiring, and sound dampening is going to require this to come off. So on this particular speaker pod, I have a GPS antenna. It's actually plugged into the radio over here with this little blue connector. So I'm going to press in this little button and I'm going to unplug that connector. Just wiggling it out, being careful not to break it. Now I'm going to pull this wire down and underneath here, and I'm going to find anything that's holding it. And in this case, there's a couple little zip ties that I'm going to cut. Now being careful that we don't cut our actual wire, I'm going to cut these zip ties loose. That's going to allow me to take that wire, pull it over to the other side, so that when we take our pod off, we're not stuck. We're just feeding that wire through here. Now we'll be putting this back later after we put our speaker pod back on. But I'm just pulling this up. Well, thank you, Harley. Your self-stick antenna wasn't even really stuck, but we're going to make sure it's stuck better when we go back together as well. So just feeding that wire on out, being careful that we don't break anything. All right, so our antenna is loose. We're going to set it over to the side. We'll stick that on better when we go back together. Now on the other side, this thing you're looking at here, this is your FM antenna. Now, it doesn't work great because it's a hidden antenna and it's not powered, but we definitely don't want to make it worse by damaging it. And we're also not going to cover it up with our sound dampening material. We're going to do the rest of the pod, but we need to unplug that in to get ready to do this. So this little white plug on the back of the radio is the FM. We're going to press in here on this little button on the side and then slide it backwards, unplugging it. We're also going to unplug both of our front speaker pods. That's the speaker pod connections. We're also going to undo it from this little Christmas tree container, retainer on each side. So just take that retainer loose. Now as we unbolt the speaker, we're going to feed these wires back through those holes. All right, for better access to one of our speaker pod bolts, I'm going to go ahead and unplug the Skyline OS radio. It's pretty simple. There's this yellow tab here. You're going to put something under it and just kind of lift up. As this comes up, it's going to unplug and get out of your way, giving us better access to this lower bolt. You don't want to cause any problems, possibly messing up any of that factory wiring. All right, so I'm going to start taking this speaker pod off, and I'm going to start with the bolts here on the outside. So we're going to take this bolt out at the bottom of it. Make our way over here to the front of that speaker pod. I'm bolting it as well. There's another one up here. And there's one more way up in here you got to take out. All right, so these are going to be a little bit shorter than the ones we're now going to remove. So those are the outside ones. Now we're going to come over here to our speaker pod where it bolts to the frame where our amp was. So from in here, we're going to be removing these bolts. Sometimes these are shorter, sometimes they're longer, but we'll see. In this case, they are the same length. So let's take our bottom bolt out here. I'm going to set these over to the side for now. All right, same thing on the other side. I'm going to start on this front lower bolt, work my way around this pod, unbolting everything holding that speaker pod on. All right, so back around here. All right, and that last upper bolt, get my hands free here. Okay, just fishing that speaker wire right out through that hole. We've got our other pod off. So at this point, we're going to continue forward with just the front portion of our install, because you could do this a couple ways. You could do front speakers only and then later add the rear speakers. I'm going to film it in that order. So we're going to complete everything in the front. We're going to run our power wire up for our amp. Then we're going to move on to the back. Now, with that being said, you always have to do a setup in the radio at the end of the complete install, and our complete install will include those rear speakers. So if you're just doing the front, I want you to make sure you get to the end and do the setup in the radio to make sure that all of that is correct. Now, we're going to continue forward. Like I say, we're going to go ahead and wrap those front pods next, get our speakers in it, start talking about our grills, the wiring related to that, get all that back in. And if you're doing the rear later, the beauty of this install is, from the factory, the rear speaker wire is already ran. It's already ran to this plug. I'm going to show you how to pin that connector with our new plug-and-play harnessing. You don't have to run new wiring later. So if you did just front and you put it all back together, you could literally start under the seat and add those rear speakers. And at Volunteer Audio, as long as you bought a package with a 4-channel amplifier, it's already tuned, it's already set, it's already ready for that. So no need to get back in the fairing. All right, so now that we have both of our speaker pods off, we're going to take our T25 Torx and we're going to remove our factory speaker. Let's go ahead and get this out on both. We're just doing this in preparation of installing our new speaker, but also installing our SoundSkins fairing pod kit. It's going to give us much better sound out of our speakers. All right, so the negative speaker wire is always going to be this larger terminal, which is black in color, and the clear or white connector is going to be the positive. We're going to unplug those. This is the Rockford, what they call Stage 2 speaker. That's factory in our CVOST. And now let's talk about this pod a little bit. It is a very thin plastic pod, and because of that, a lot of times your speaker will sound more hollow than you would want it to. By wrapping it in the SoundSkins, it's going to make it seem denser. It's going to make it where it has more of a thud than a plastic feel, but the main thing is that bass is going to sound so much better out of this pod once we get that installed. Now, our new Cicada speaker that we're going to put in does not have a little alignment tab hole. So we are going to cut this little plastic tab off. I'm going to shield it so it doesn't hit me in the face when I cut it. We're just going to trim this down. Just using a set of zip tie cutters, just make that flush. So that was one of our first steps. Now I'm going to open up our SoundSkins kit. Actually, we'll go ahead and get this other speaker out first, because that kit does both pods. We're going to reuse those factory screws, so we're going to save those over to the side. All right, same thing on this one, just unplugging both of those speaker terminals. And we'll go over which one's positive and negative again as we put our new speaker wire and our crossover in these pods. All right, so let's open up our SoundSkins kit. So we've got a couple different size boxes depending on what you're putting this on, but our Road Glide one here, got some larger sheets that have probably been folded over or cut down to this size. The good thing about these are you're not just going to get material, you're going to get sheets of material that have already been pre-cut for you. They're self-stick and they're pre-cut to make your install much easier than you trying to cut it out and trying to come up with what's going to fit where. They are going to include directions, which shows you all the pieces, and then directions showing you where each one of those pieces go. But I'll show you that in video form here. Try to make it a little easier, because it is a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle. It can be a little confusing. I've done this enough that it's not confusing to me at this point, and maybe I can help you make this easier. All right, so the first thing you're going to do before you go putting any of these on, you're going to want to take each one of these sheets, and you're going to want to tear out the parts that have already been cut. They've got a plotter that's cut through all of this, and they cut almost all the way through. But you got to tear just a little bit more just to get that piece all the way out. Now we're going to try not to accidentally tear this material, but if you do, it's not the end of the world. It is going to just stick on the pod. Any tears or anything you've done are not going to affect the sound, but they've got this laid out where it'll make it easy for us to know where these go and to make them lay correctly on these pods. So we're just going to tear out a couple of these pieces, and then I'll probably tear out the rest without you, and then we'll come back to putting these on the speaker pods. All right, so after we get that piece, this is our first piece we've done, and we'll tear out these little inset holes that they've done. And you'll see on our pod that's going to clear, whether it be a factory screw hole or a factory piece of sound dampening. So they do actually put a little bit of on there from the factory, but not nearly as much as we're going to do. So there's our first part out. We're just going to continue that tearing out the additional parts that you see that have been cut for you, and we'll come back here in a minute and start putting them on the pods. All right, so we got all of our parts tore out, and it's a little bit of a puzzle. So I'm going to go through this and show you how to do this. A lot of times I will find a piece that fits, and then I'll find the same piece, because a lot of times you'll have two that look the same, but they'll be maybe 180 out from each other. For instance, these two. These two are going to look the same, but you got to find the one for the correct size side pod. Now, on our pods, this is a brand new bike. It is clean. I don't have to really clean any of this to make it stick. But if you have an older bike, if there's some dirt on it, take some isopropyl rubbing alcohol and just rub it all over, clean this thing off with that alcohol so you'll have a good surface to stick. So let's look here. This piece is going to go right here. Sometimes this can be a little bit of a puzzle because in our mind we're thinking we're going to have a piece this size. You don't realize you have this additional part. This one's going to go on this side. That other one will go on the other. So I'm going to go ahead and peel the backing off. Just peel this little white paper off the back. It'll be self-stick at that point. And if any of this tears as you're doing it, don't worry, just peel it off before you stick it on the pod. Again, just lining this up. You'll see it's got these 3 holes to kind of show you where it goes. And another good thing is it's sticky, but it's not so sticky that you can't unstick it and stick it again if you were to stick it in the wrong place. So it's not an issue that, oh, I've stuck and now I've got to buy another kit because I messed up. It's really not that bad. So that part's where it goes. I'm going to grab the other side pod and put that same part on it. And if you'll do this as you come up with where the parts go, it's going to be easier on you figuring it out versus trying to do one whole one and then trying to do the other whole one. Just want to make sure we don't leave any like air pockets in behind it. So we're just sticking it and then we're just pressing it in place to make sure it sticks well. I'm going to flip both of these upside down because we have this big flat area and it's going to be easy to determine where these large pieces go with it upside down. And just like with any puzzle, the more the pieces you get on, the easier it's going to be to figure out where the other ones go because there's not going to be as much left to question. All right, so I'll do the same thing on the other one now. I've done this enough times though that I can look at the piece and pretty well understand about where it's going to go. It is easier to do the big pieces first. Stick them in place. All right. So I'm going to go to this side. This side is going to be a piece like this. So you're going to look for that part. You're going to see where it would go. We're going to go ahead and peel the backing off of it. A little bit of sound dampening material goes a long way. So we're going to cover a lot of the pod, but you're going to notice not every square inch is covered. It doesn't have to all be covered to give us the result we're after. You'll notice it just kind of bends and goes over all the parts. On this one, we're going to bring it toward the front here and over. All right, let's do the other one in the same place while we know where our parts go. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. We're just making sure that we wrap all the edges. We're not covering any of these screw points. They've already got all that cut out for us. We're just sticking it in place. It's going to make a big difference in sound. All right, so now we're going to go to the outside. So I've done that side. So now we're going to find a piece that looks like this. And you're going to see there's probably more than one. This is the one for the other side. So we're going to grab this one up. It's already got a cutout to go around that little factory piece. That is the factory sound deadening. Those 2 little pieces. I just did the absolute minimum instead of doing the amount that we needed. These aren't always exactly where the last one was, but it's within reason that cutout is that you shouldn't have to take them off. So let's go ahead and do the other one. All right, so let's go ahead and let's move to the top. Go to this side of the pod, and you're going to notice that we have 2 different looks on that top. So one side has got our FM antenna. So this one's going to have quite a bit different because we can't cover that antenna up and still get any reception. So the larger piece here is going to go on this side. Let's get it peeled. All right, so we're just going to turn this around, try to line it up with this outside edge. You'll notice I've already got this cut so it Goes on these weird pieces without you having to try to figure this out. It's a very, very good job they've done laying out and cutting every one of these pieces for us. All right, so the other side is going to be a little different in this part, again, because of that FM antenna. So we're going to find just the back section first. Go and peel and stick it on. Again, here's an example. Sometimes when you're tearing it out, you might tear through some of the thinner spots. And don't worry about it, because when you go together on here, it's going to stick and stay right where it's supposed to go. Well, tear didn't hurt a thing. That's just there for us to hold it together while we're getting it to here to stick it on. All right, so let's look at a couple of the other pieces here. It's a little tricky because I've got to find each one of these individual parts. Now, always I'm going to lay these over and I'm going to see if it overlaps my antenna, because this antenna has got an area they stick it, but it's not always in the same place. So if you got a pair of scissors, you can lay your part over, see where it's overlapping your antenna, and just cut it and then stick it on the pod, on the pod there. Again, we're just making this plastic not have a plastic sound. All right, so both of these pods, this area is going to have the same style looking piece. This is the one for the other side. So we'll go to this one on this front edge here. Sticking that piece in, let's grab the one that goes over here. Makes it a lot easier when, as you discover where a piece goes, just go ahead and put it on the other pod in the same place. You're going to save yourself a lot of time. All right, let's go ahead and put a couple pieces on the face of it so we can get those out of the way. So you're going to end up with these little pieces like this one that just go on the front. Again, they leave access for all this factory hardware. And then we're going to have another one over in here. This is the other side. This is the one that goes here. Let's grab our other one and do the same thing. This is a little time consuming, it takes a few minutes. And I want to show you all the steps because it is a puzzle. And if you can watch me do it, I know you can do it. But if you call me asking me how to do it, it's going to be really hard to describe this over the phone. So we're going to take a little bit of extra time it takes to show you every piece go on to try to make that easier on you. You can always pause this, rewind it, rewatch it. You get every piece where it's supposed to go. All right, so now we're over to this side. We've got the face done, the back's done, side's done. We have this area. And yes, we have parts that go here. Now this is another place where it's going to be different. On the other side, without the FM antenna, we have one big piece that goes there. On this side, we're going to have some smaller ones. Let's start with this part right here. So both of them are going to have this part. This is correct for this side. Let's go and grab that same place on the other one. That's where it goes right there. This is where that big piece goes. I'm going to go ahead and get it installed. So this is the outside. You'll notice it goes right through here, and then you'll bend it in like that. Start at the top, and then I'll push it in to this curve. Let's do the same thing on this one. Again, as you see, this side has that FM antenna. So they're going to give you a piece that is going to go like this. That's where it goes. See, it's got this notch back here. So you can actually line it up down here where it falls into that notch and wrap it up and over. All right, we just have a couple more pieces. I want to show you where they go. So up here at the top, you're going to have this part. This one is a little confusing looking because it's got to be bent down like that before it'll stick. Once you put it in place, it looks correct. You will spend a lot of time trying to figure out what this piece does if you don't realize that it actually bends where it sticks. We'll grab the same piece on the opposite side. Almost done. We're going to move into putting those speakers in. All right, so we have one last piece. And this piece is going to be on the one that has the FM antenna, so not this one, but this one. And it is designed to go here. But again, you'll notice the FM antenna is actually a little bit in our way, so I'm just going to cut it so that we don't overlap it. I don't want to be the reason we have less FM. Not that I'm ever going to use FM. We're going to use a smartphone and some apps for probably all of our music. But why make something not work that worked before? Just like that. We're not covering the middle of the antenna, so we shouldn't interfere any. All right, so both pods are fully wrapped. Lots of pieces now have taken shape, and we're ready to move on to putting our speakers in. And in this case, this speaker is a component set, so we have a crossover and a little additional wiring that I want to go over with you. So let me grab that. We'll come right back, and we'll be working on getting that wiring into these pods. All right, so now we're ready to put our mid, our 6.5-inch mid, in our pod. But first, we've got to prepare for our tweeter. And in this case, we have the grill that has the tweeter that's going to go in it, and it comes with this crossover in that package. You're going to see here you have one that's labeled output to tweeter. This has to actually get outside of the pod where we can connect it to the tweeter itself. It's going to be in the grill here in front. The rest of this actually goes inside of the pod. This is going to connect to our wiring inside, and this is going to go out and connect to our new woofer. So let's start by making a way to get this wire, the tweeter wire, this wire, outside of this pod. And what we're going to do is we're actually just going to take that original hole right here, and we're going to pull this grommet toward us out where we have access now through here. Now I'm going to take the one that it says to tweeter, which is this one. We need to get through this hole outside. And if possible, we'd like to get that plug out too. Let's see if it'll fit through the hole, and it does. So now that that's out, we have to get this back in. And to do that, I'm just going to take a razor blade, and I'm going to cut through this rubber. Now be careful. We don't want you to cut yourself. So do this in whatever safe manner you can come up with. But you're going to cut through this rubber grommet, creating a slot to allow that wire to be put in where this middle wire is run through. You could drill a new hole, but I'd rather keep it as airtight as possible. To give us better mid-bass, we went through a lot of trouble to make sure we get good sound, and I don't want to do anything to mess that up. All right, so I've cut through that grommet, exposing my wire. Now all I want to do is I want to go ahead and run this with that in that same crack toward the middle of it, and then push this back in, or force it back in so it tries to seal that rubber around. There we go. We've got our plug so we can separate that grill and take it out. And actually we have enough wire, likely we can start pulling it back this way even more. Let's look inside. So our speaker pod on our bike, when it's installed, is in this manner, and we have this crossover. So I'm going to take and secure this in here with a little piece of Velcro. Now you could leave it in there, but I'm afraid going down the road, this is going to make noise and it's going to aggravate you, and you may even shorten the life of that part. So there's a couple ways you could do that. You could use some pieces of that sound dampening material you had left over and go over it and secure it down. But I'm just going to take a small piece of Velcro and I'm going to secure it there. Now they do not send Velcro with this. I haven't seen that. So that is something you're going to have to source on your own, or you could use a double-sided tape, and we're going to secure that down. So let me get a piece of that and I will secure that inside of my pod. All right, so I'm going to use some Velcro. This is a very, very industrial style Velcro, very, very strong. And this actually came in our Cicada 2000 watt amp box. It's supposed to be to hold the amp down. We've got a larger piece of Velcro we're going to send you to hold the amp in place. I don't like these little bitty pieces on an amp. But when we're talking about inside of this enclosure, holding a crossover, this is going to work great. And this should be something you already have. And if you don't, you can go to Home Depot, Ace Hardware, Lowe's, those places, and pick up a piece of Velcro. They've got the good Velcro there. So now that I've unstuck that, stick it back in here, making sure that it is secured. There it is inside of here. It's going to be held in there very well. We don't have to worry about it bouncing around. So let's move on to the next step. Next step, you're going to have this wire in here, and it's going to say input from amplifier, or from amp, and that's going to connect to these two wires. So I always want to take a pair of needle nose pliers and I'm going to tighten up these connections to make sure that this is a good connection and it does not come unplugged in here. I don't want to have to pull the fairing later because we didn't have a terminal tight and we had to replug it in. So I'm just going to squeeze around on this, making sure that the center of that is tighter. And we're going to see again, here we are, we have that black and white terminal. The white one is your positive, and we're going to plug the red one into it. It's in and it is tight. We're going to do the same thing with the black one. You'll notice it's a smaller one than this. Don't worry, this still works as long as you've tightened it up, which we have. So now that is good. It's in here, and I'm not going to leave that much excess wire, so I'm going to grab a zip tie and just zip tie that together. Quite a bit of extra wire there that I'm just going to put a zip tie around. That's going to keep it from trying to unplug itself as well. All right, so that'll be good to hang out there. Now our new speaker, our mid from Cicada, actually has screw style terminals labeled positive and negative. So now we're going to take a little Phillips screwdriver. Looks like it's probably, let's see, is it number 1 or number 2? Looks like we can use the number 2. And it's a strong magnet, so it's going to try to pull your screwdriver. The one that's with the negative is going to be your black terminal. And the positive will be your red terminal. All right, just like that. Now earlier we cut that little alignment tab as we showed you. I'm going to put my speaker with my logo facing upward. This is the top of the pod. And now you have a couple options. They sent you some screws. They go right through here, but they go through the back of each one of these holes. I like the factory hardware, but it's very, very tight in this speaker. So if you do this, you want to be very, very careful that you do not poke a hole through the speaker trying to start these screws. So I'm going to start each one of them through here. Again, you can use the ones they sent you if you want. It's aluminum, so even though this is tight, this does go through it. So once they're in, I'm going to back them off some and line them up with those holes. Got to make sure you pull that speaker all the way in. Can't leave it loose. All right, so you're going to want to look up in here and make sure you've pulled it all the way in. If you see any air gap at all, you're just going to continue to turn it. It's going to pull it in. It may feel tight before it is because you're going through that aluminum. And just like that, you have all 4 screws in, your speaker's in, it's tight. We're fully wrapped with all of our sound skins. We have our wire coming out that's going to come over to our tweeter that's in our grill. So we're good to go with this one. I'm going to move on to the other one. I'm going to follow those same steps and do our second one. We'll be back in a minute, putting these back in the bike, and in a few, I'll show you how to get those tweeter spade terminals on the end of those wires. All right, so we're ready to go ahead and put our speaker pod back on. We're going to go ahead and feed the tweeter wiring up through here, along with that original wiring for the speaker. Back in where it goes. Make sure you keep your FM antenna up and over. Get all of this lined back up. I'm going to start a few screws. We're not going to actually tighten any of them up until we get some up here and some on the side started, making sure we're in the right place. Because the last thing we want to do is have it in a bind. Start tightening everything down. All right, so that one's in and started. Let's move to these on the side now. Everything's going to be a little bit tighter because we have all this sound deadening material now, which is good. That's what we want. We want a really tight fit. So now that I have all of these started, I'm going to go ahead and tighten these down. Well, let's grab the other speaker pod and do it again. All right, so again, putting in the other speaker pod. We want to make sure that we feed our wire back through this original location where it was factory. Same thing with the other one, making sure nothing gets pinched, everything's where it goes. Slide this up where it goes and go ahead and start. I like to start at least one by hand before I get the screwdriver out, just to make sure that we don't risk getting anything cross-threaded. Once we have that one in place, we can bring it most of the way in. Let's start this back one now. So 2 of the 3 started there. I'll move to the side ones again. All right, the one more that's we're gonna put that lower one in down here that we'd unplugged the radio for. Tighten the other 2 all the way up now. All right, so now we can go ahead, plug the radio back in. We're just gonna push that connector in, then as you go down, it's gonna lock it in and move forward there. I'm gonna plug in my FM antenna so I don't forget to do that later. Goes in that bottom location there. That's plugged back in. Also have our speaker wires on each side. This is what's connecting the mid up to our amp. Remember our tweeter connections outside. All right, so all that is plugged back in. All right, so if you want big power coming out of your amplifier, you have to send a lot of power in. Again, we're going to end up changing our battery to that lithium titanate battery. And anytime you go over 1,000 watt RMS, this amp's 2,000 watts. So that would be the FLX 1400.4 or the FLX 2000.4. It's going to require not only 4-gauge huge copper power wire, but it's going to require that battery upgrade. And we're going to do that in this bike, but it's not that we want to sell you a battery. I want to make sure that your amp does what it's supposed to. We want to make sure we don't burn up anything in the bike. And a couple $100 lithium battery from your local parts store is not going to cut it. It has to be a very dense battery with a ton of reserve power and a lot of cranking amps, and excess power fits that bill. All right, so we're going to take this large power wire and we're going to start routing it toward the front of our bike. I'm actually going to turn my handlebars this way. Make a little bit of room here because up here at the front of this neck, there's a cover you need to see. So come on in here and look at this. All right, so we're going to come down here near on the side of our frame. There's a plastic cover right here. That's covering the passage our wiring has to go. If you'll take that and pull backwards and out, you'll see that it will release. There's a little clip on the side, and pulling backwards and outward, it's going to let you pull that out enough to run your wire behind it and into the fairing. So this is a really large wire, so you're going to have to be careful how you route it. We're going to come up through here. Now, we're not connected to the battery on purpose because both of these are open. We're going to come up through here behind this, and we're going to feed both of these wires into this side of this frame, this hole into here. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to move up here to the front. I'll find where those wires are coming through. They're what we call Siamese. You got a power and a ground, so we want to pull them both in. I want to get them both in the same direction. Now I've got both of these wires. I want to pull them on up into the fairing like that. So what we want to do is, if at all possible, it's good to be able to get our fuse holder down into this area in case we have to do any future changing of the fuses. It's a very large holder. It's a very large wire. They tend to give you enough wiring on these to fish it behind this side cover. So I'm going to get it into this area because that's where we're going to end up leaving it, is right up in here. And that gives us enough lead to come over for our power and enough lead to go back to the battery on our ground. Now that we have that there, we're going to start coming up into here under this cover. It's a very large wire, so we have to route it where it's going to fit. We'll cross over here and come up into this area. Now, I'm doing this now because any excess I'm going to pull into the fairing. So let me get my cover, start snapping it back in place. Starting up here at the front. all the way to the back. All right, so it's all snapped in. Get our ABS line back where it goes. This tape over where it goes. Anytime you mess with these brake lines, you want to look back down here on the frame and make sure they're still in their holder so you don't pinch them when you put the gas tank back on. And pull this tape back over on both locations. And we've got our power wire into that cover. So now that we've got our power wire up here in the fairing, let's go in behind our headlight and let's just pull it through this brace and get it over here to the side. Pull it up through there. We're going to go right back here by the radio where our connector comes through for our factory amp, pulling through this hole. All right, now we may end up pulling some of that back down after we get our amp mounted, but first, let's go ahead and take a piece of Velcro. We sent you this large industrial piece of Velcro. I've already peeled the backing off. Let's go ahead and set it down here in the middle. Stick it here on the bottom. You're not going to need a plate to mount this amplifier. A piece of Velcro is going to be fine to hold it in place. They actually send you two little bitty pieces with the amp. I wanted to send you a bigger piece to mount it. We'll get a few of these wires just out of my way temporarily. This little connector here we're going to undo. Give us a little bit more motion with this wiring while we get our amp where it goes. I want to come over here with our amplifier, and we've got to connect our power and ground up to it. So I'm going to take my wiring up here to the top like this, over the top. And you're going to see on the end, it's going to have one marked 12 volt and one marked ground. I want you to make sure these are spun out enough that your wiring will go in. And we're going to take this wire that's already got ferrules on it. We're going to stick it in this hole. The red one goes into one marked 12 volt. The black one goes into one marked ground. This is important. We got to get these in the right place or it's not going to work, and then you're likely going to mess something up as well. So be for sure that you put them in the right hole. Using your Allen tool, make sure you get them all the way tight. Like so. Now I want to go ahead and peel the backing off of this Velcro. We have a good sticky spot. If you bought it from Volunteer Audio, we've already set everything on your amplifier. So all you've got to do is put it in place. So we're going to slide it all the way toward the back. See, I got some of this wiring loose to make us a little bit more room. I'm going to pull some of that power and ground down so it'll not be in a bind on us. All right, now that we're in here, we're just going all the way back toward the radio. We'll do a little bit of wire management here in a few minutes. With our Volunteer Audio SeirenHD interface, all of our wiring is already done. So our speaker wire is already connected to our amp, our RCA is already connected. After we get our headlight in, we'll put in our plate that actually bolts our A to B module in here, and we'll do a little wire management and show you that part. All right, so now that you have your amp in place, we wanted to secure this wiring up, make sure that the headlight isn't rubbing against it. So I'm just going to take another zip tie, sticking this wiring up in here like this, and securing it in place. Once I've got that done, I'm just going to cut the end and flush cut that zip tie. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and take our headlight, just plug it back in and get it reinstalled. Just going to start each one of these before we go tight with any of them. This headlight's definitely going to fit a little tighter now as we pull into our sound skins. That's what we want. We want everything to where it's not going to rattle. It's not going to be loose. Let's get these two harder bolts started back up in here. There's a lot of room in the nose of this fairing right in here for A to B module and some wiring. Now sometimes you'll have a garage door opener mounted here. If you have the garage door opener option, that would be in some of the CVOs or maybe something you've added. It's pretty simple. Just take it loose, feed the wiring back, and just mount it behind the headlight. It still works in there, and we're going to need this room instead for our A to B module. Make sure I've got all these bolts tied on our headlight. And that is done. So now I'm going to get our A to B mount and come back and let's get that mounted in the fairing. All right, so we're going to take our A to B mount, and it's going to use these holes right where that original garage door opener would have been. So we're just going to drop the hardware down through here and tighten both of those down. All right, so your A to B mount came with some hardware, a couple little screws that we're going to use to mount our A to B module here in the front. Just line those holes up. Just like so, we've got our module mounted. All right, so let me show you wire management. We've got our module mounted. It comes down to a little bit of patience and understand where these things are going to fit. So our module is going to have a little longer wiring on purpose. So we're going to have 4 extra RCA outputs. This is for future expansion of your system, whether it be a secondary amp, a dedicated sub amp. We've already got connections on our interface for that in the future. But since we're not using them on this install, we're going to take that excess wiring. We're going to go to the end of the amp where the other RCA is connected. We're just going to push this wire down to that end of it like so. Now we're going to take the ones that come out of that end of the amp, and we're just going to feed them underneath this metal bracket. And the reason we're doing that, anything under that is going to clear the fairings. So each one of these, we know if it's under there, our fairing's going to go back on and there's not going to be a problem getting everything to fit. As we get those in place, we're going to pull this wire that went to those just right back to us. May not be perfect your first time. You can always just pull the wire back forward and go in again. So now that I have that done, I'm going to take a zip tie. I'm going to go down around this wiring to make sure that it stays there. So all the wiring that was leaving that module is going to come around over here through this hole and secure it. So it's not just loose in there. Then we're going to flush cut that zip tie. All right, on the other side, we have this wire, and I want to show you what normally happens. This wire would have plugged into that original amp. If you take it and you pull up on it, you're going to get a little extra lead, just enough to put this where I normally put it. But one of the things that's going to get in our way is this upper headlight bolt. Now, if you'll take that bolt and swap it with another bolt in the side of the speaker pod, so let's go and remove this one bolt all the way out. See, this one's really long and it sticks out where our wiring goes. So I'll take this one out, come down here to this bottom speaker pod bolt and remove it. You're going to see it's a much shorter bolt. Same bolt, but shorter. Take the long one, put it back in the speaker pod. Now install the short one up here. It's going to hold the headlight, but it's not going to come out the back and possibly damage wiring or be in our way for our wiring. So tightening that one back up. Now, this is where it gets not hard, but you just got to work for a minute getting the wiring where it goes. We want this wire underneath this terminal. We're going to be careful that we don't damage any of our speaker wires or other wiring doing it. We're just going to bring it under and just slide it toward the back like so. What that allows us to do now is we have this where it can stand up straight. That's important because that's what I want to do with this plug. So I'm going to plug it in, red snap. Now it's going to hang out right there vertical, which is where I want it to end up at. I'm going to snap my speaker wire from my front pod back in where it went, and I'm going to plug it back in as well. Now we're going to take a zip tie again, just like we did on the other side. We're going to be going through this whole location down here. We're going to zip tie all of this right up in here so we have a nice clean install. Now we're just going to do the same thing again. We actually have another hole here for another zip tie location. Come through under all of our wiring. I'm actually going to change that bolt out because it's going to give us a little bit more room on this side as well. It doesn't hurt to go ahead and change that to the other short bolt. Short bolt in, long bolt back down here. This is the largest amp that Cicada makes in a 4-channel form. So we're just making sure we have plenty of room to fit all of our wiring. As we get smaller on our amplifier, the easier this wiring management gets because we have a little bit more room. As you see, that gave us enough room there to pull that wire down. And we're good and clean all the way around our amplifier now. So I'll go ahead and flush cut that last zip tie. That looks really good in there. All right, let's go ahead and put our gas tank back on now. Just going to set it back down. We'll worry about that vent line here in just a minute. This vent now, I'm just going to drop it into each one of these little hooks on the side of the frame. I flipped them up. I'll lift up on the front and get to that one. I wish I could show you this on camera, but I can't see it, so I know you can't either. But I figure if they hook them in there from the factory, we need to as well. All right, so we are snapped in on those. Let's take our front vent and plug it back in, like so. Take our rear vent, reconnect it as well. Let's go ahead and put our 4 gas tank bolts back in. Let's go and start the back ones. Let's start them, but not tighten them, because we're going to get those front ones in. I always like to start the one over here first. It's a lot easier to get to than the one on the other side. The other side's got your air intake in the way. So let's kind of get it in the hole. Take our ratchet and get it started. Now this one you should be able to go tight with, shouldn't be a problem. Get it on installed. Now we can go to the back of the tank and tighten those down. All right. Don't forget to plug back up your fuel line. If you don't do that, when you go to get done and you go to start, it's not going to start. You're going to think we did something wrong. You just forgot to hook up that gas line. Again, silver sleeve up, push line up. You have to wiggle it just a little bit. When you get it in, that silver sleeve's going to snap down just like so. Now don't forget about this plug-in. If you reach under the tank, you'll be able to feel where it is. This little black push button faces downward. Line it back up with that plug. So spin it where it lines up and it clicks in. All right, so our gas tank is back installed. Only thing we have left on it is to install these 2 little rubber covers on the front. They are left and right. So you're going to want to make sure that you put the longer portion facing downward. Get those back on top of those bolts. All right, so that one is back on. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Moving on to our tweeters. All right, so right now, at this point in time, the grills and the tweeters are sold separately. They're part of our kit. Eventually, they'll come in one box. But I'm going to show you what we got. So inside of our grill box, we got 2 grills, we got 2 rings, and we got all of our number 2 Phillips screws to mount these tweeters to the grill. In our tweeter box, we actually got our crossover, which we earlier put in the video, and each side has this wire. It says output to TW, which is tweeter, and it also came with a pack of connectors. Now, these connectors are a little difficult to put on without the right tools. I do have a special crimping tool just for this style connector. You could use a different connector. It could be just a spade, a set of spade crimp terminals that you crimped on the wire, but I'm going to use these and show you the right way to do that. We are going to have a wire that has a stripe and a solid. Most of the time, your striped wire is going to be your negative and your solid wire is going to be your positive. On the back of our tweeters, they are positive and negative marked as well. So before we get too far, we're going to go ahead and put some of these terminals on. And the way this works, you have 2 different places here that get crimped. You set your wire in like this. I have a special set of crimpers. That was my first attempt through. Bend it around on the wire, so now I'm going to go to the smaller sized. Crimping it again. Now you could also add some solder to this if you want to. You don't have to just use the crimper. It's very tight, so I'm going to use a screwdriver to get that out so I don't break the terminal. All right, so now that I got that in there, I've got to just push it out of that channel without breaking it. We've got a pretty tight crimp on that. There we go. All right, so that little tool bends both of those ears over at the same time, and then it leaves another set of these that we're going to use a different spot to do. So I'm going to do that here first. I'll take it down to the next size. All right, so that is the correct tool to actually put this style crimp terminal on your wire. Again, you could use a pair of pliers and try to bend this over. I like having the proper tools. You could add some solder, but this is definitely on there. Very, very tight, as you saw. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other one. Each tweeter is going to come with 2 straight ones and 2 that look like a 90. I'm going to use the 90-degree one so it's facing toward the middle of the tweeter. And bringing that up there. Got that one crimped in, it's good and tight. And then I'll go ahead and do the terminal side or the wire side as well. All right, so it doesn't come with these tools. This is something you can buy. I've seen them $10 to $20 at various places. They're not very expensive, but it's nice to have that exact style terminal. At that point, you can feed these rubber covers that they send you over this. They're going to stretch and go over. You kind of have to put this over at the end. So you're going to put that on here. It's going to cover all this, make sure it never shorts out on anything. Do that on both terminals. All right, so now we're going to take our wires, we're going to connect it to our tweeter. And the reason I use those 90-degree terminals was so that I could take those wires, facing them toward the middle of it. Let's see, we're going to put our negative on now. That's the striped wire, it's going on the negative. I'll show you here in a second. Let me get them both connected. I'll show you why we did it like this. There's the positive. We're going to run them up toward the top. And when we put our ring on the other side, it's going to hold that wire toward the middle. It's going to keep that wire from possibly hitting the woofer as our speaker is playing. So I'm going to drop this in. I've already dropped my 4 Phillips screws in it. And they're lined up. I'm going to go to the other side now, and we're going to take this ring. And I'm going to position my wiring down in here, making sure I keep my wiring toward the middle. I'm going to drop this ring in, like so. One of my screws fell out, but that's not a big deal. I'm going to tighten these screws into that ring now. From the back side, our wires run right up here at the top. It's going to be a lot less visible once it's installed, and it's going to give us plenty of room to run in there back to where we need to go to plug in. All right, so let's go ahead and get our other tweeter. We're going to do the exact same process to it, get both grills done, and we'll be putting these on a little later as we're finishing up the job, because next we got to go to the back. We got to put a new battery in. We got to start cutting those lids in and put those 6x9s in after we get this done. All right, so as we continue on through our build, we just got our tweeters mounted on our grills. We're going to put those in a little later as we go together. We're going to move on to the back now. We've got to upgrade that battery. We got to run some rear speaker wires. And the first thing I want to do to prepare for that is we're just going to remove our rear saddlebags. On this model, there are no added on lights. There are no speakers currently in it. So there are also no plugs going into the bag. But if you have a CVO or something that has added on lights, you will need to actually disconnect that wiring. In this case, all I'm going to have to do is open the lid and remove these 2 retainers. Now you can set your bag over on a table or somewhere. I've actually got a stand that I'm going to mount it on, because later we'll do a little bit of wiring in the bags and even cut our lids with it on our stand. All right, so now I took those bags off because I'm going to remove these side covers. That is where we ran that fuse down earlier, and we're going to secure it in here. It's a good place to put the fuse holder, because if you ever need to check that fuse to see if it's blown or remove that fuse for some reason, you can do it without pulling the seat or the battery, and it's going to keep it a lot cleaner in this area. So I'm going to take both side covers off, this side and the other one, because we got a little bit of wiring we're also going to run for those rear 6x9s in those lids, and we're going to do that in behind these panels as well. All right, so we're going to start disconnecting what we need to prepare to change out our battery. So I've got our wiring that we ran earlier, but now we're going to do a couple other things. We're going to unplug this wiring that goes to the rear fender. This particular plug has got our factory speaker wires in it, does our tail light wiring. We're also going to take these auxiliary plugs and just get them out of the way. That's for your heated gear. We're also going to need to take a couple other harnesses here loose. And the way these work, you just lift up and slide forward. And this is the antenna for our key. So we've got those undone. Now, at the front, there's a little button here you can push forward. You can lift this up and you can slide all of this over to the side, making a little bit of room on top of your battery to get to it. And we're going to now take this module. Now, at this point, you should have already removed your fuse earlier. If you forgot to do that, you need to turn the ignition on, you need to pull that side fuse out, killing all the power to the bike, because this is your body control module. The important part is your security system's in here, and if you take this loose and stand it up vertical and somehow or another turn on power, it's going to think you tipped your bike over, and your bike's not going to run until you reset that tip fault. So we've got our fuse out. We did that earlier. We're going to go ahead and take our BCM loose. We're going to stand it up vertical, which is what you got to do to get your battery, and just kind of hang it over to this side. We don't have to worry about that tip fault though, because our fuse is undone. Now we're going to take our it's actually a T30 up here in the front. We're going to take this bolt loose on top of our battery. And we're going to lift up this cover and get it out of our way so we can change that battery out. All right, so this bike is brand new. This battery is brand new, but they are weak. Even from the factory, they are so weak. But even if you put a stronger lithium battery, you need a 5 amp battery tender on these new bikes. They actually have a pretty large draw. Even when there's nothing been done, you're going to have a battery go dead in about 3 days, 4 days if you leave your key nearby. If you have a big audio system and a big battery like this, you're going to get a little longer time, but you're still going to be draining that battery every time it's not on a tender. And as you continually drain your battery, you're going to damage that battery long term and really shorten its life. So we want to make sure we always put it on a tender when we're not riding. I've undone my positive and negative cables. There's this cloth strap at the back of the battery. That is there to help you lift this battery up. The factory battery is actually about 22 pounds, whereas our new lithium weighs 7. So once we get this out, it's heavy. We're going to put a much lighter version. It's a lot stronger in. All right, this is our new battery. As you see, no struggle. It's pretty light at 7 pounds. We're going to drop it back in. It's the same size. It's a direct drop-in replacement to that stock battery. Making sure we get our terminals out so they're not under it. We'll drop it right in. All right, so we're going to reuse that original hardware to hook up our battery, but we want to go ahead while we're here. We want to go ahead and connect up our new amp power wire at the same time. So go through this ring terminal, through that stock terminal, and go into the front of the battery. Now you have extra terminals in the back of this battery. I don't normally use them because the way the cover goes on, it's not easy to connect to those rear terminals. Make sure both of these are pointed toward the front. It's going to allow your cover to go back on, and make sure you tighten this all the way down. Now we have our ground wire. I'll push some of it down in here and feed it over this. You get a little spark anytime you connect up a battery and a new amp. This is a big amp. So those capacitors, as they get their power in the amplifier, you're going to get that spark. That is normal. Don't let it worry you. All right. Our new terminal's on. Everything is tight there. Let's get our battery cover. Let's go ahead and put it back on. This just feeds right under here, like so. Now we're going to take our BCM, sliding it back into this holder, pushing it down to where it clips in. Now let's bring this plate back over here and put it where it goes. So it slides under the back, like so. Snaps in the front, clips in. Now let's get our antenna back where it goes. This is what reads that key in the front. We definitely want to make sure that it's plugged back in or our bike won't start. And we're going to take this auxiliary connector, slide it back in and lock it in too. Everything's got a place. Let's put it back where it goes. Let's take our heated gear connectors and snap those back in. All right, for now, I'm not going to leave this unplugged because the next step we're going to be working on is our rear speaker wires. That's going to be simple. I'll show you that process here shortly. Well, let's move over and secure this fuse holder now. Our amp is now connected to the battery. We have power to it, and let's secure that fuse holder up the correct way. All right, so there's not a lot to this. There's actually a hole or a couple holes here in the top of the holder, and they give you a little Allen head tool in case you ever have to change that fuse in the top of it. I'm just going to push this into here, and I want to take a zip tie I'm going to come up and over this frame rail. Actually, let's go on this way. It's going to be a little easier. Through there, and then zip tied here. Simple as that, just to make sure that it stays where I want it. It doesn't end up moving anywhere else or rubbing into anything. So just that simple, we've got our fuse holder mounted. All right, so let's move into the wiring to the back speakers. Again, from the factory, this plug already has the rear speaker wires, but this plug does not. So we're going to actually pin that in to this plug. So at Volunteer Audio, we actually have what we call an under-seat speaker harness plug. It's going to have two outlets. One will feed 6x9s in the lids. The other one will feed a set of TruePack speakers, because this system, using a 4-channel amplifier and 4-ohm speakers, is more than powerful enough to run up to 8 speakers, so we can add on those additional locations if we want to. For now, we're just going to go with the 4, but I want to show you how to wire this in. We're going to send you a sheet of paper. It's going to have a picture of this exact plug. We're going to show you exactly where these wires go, but I'm going to show you maybe a little easier way than what this shows. I'm going to take a pair of pliers and go down inside of here into these 2 middle holes, and I'm going to pull this center portion out, all the way out. That's going to expose these pins here. Now don't get worried about this. Nothing has power on it. All this is just unplugged from the bike. But these 2 outside corners that have these white block offs, we're going to have to take and put wires in. So I'm just pushing out on the little pin, down on the white portion, sliding it out, making way for our new wire. All right, now we're just going to slide those out the back of the connector. All right, that's going to open up 4 holes for the new wiring that we have here in our harness. All right, so I want you to look at your sheet of paper. You'll see the corresponding pins. If we look at the end, the outside one's 6, the one next to it's 5. Now on the underside, the corner is 7, and the one toward the middle is 8. So we're going to look here. Our outside position is number 6. 6 is green and black. So we're going to take our harness, and you're going to see there's a little divot right there that lines up with this little bump on the back. So we're going to slide our pin in so that lines up, keeping it straight, and just pushing through till it clicks. Now we're going to take our other green wire that goes next to it. We're going to do the same thing with it now. It's clicked in. So now these other 2 wires, these 2 purple wires, go in these lower positions. Number 7 is the outside, number 7 is solid. So I'm going to put number 7, the solid one, in that outside position. Sliding it in as well till I hear it click. If you don't hear it click, it doesn't come all the way through, which we didn't on that one. I can reach in here with a pair of pliers and I can just pull that on forward till it clicks. Now we got one more to go in, same way. This is the one with the stripe on it. These are a little larger gauge wire on purpose. We know we're running a lot of power. We want to make sure our speaker wires are large enough. Keep pushing it through to here, and let's lock it in. All right, so after you get them all in, you just want to make sure that they're all pointed the same direction. They're all about the same depth. And if you see that's the case, you've pulled them all in, you're just going to drop that little retainer back in. It's really cool because it's going to start lining them all up and position them all correctly for you. Just push that all the way down till it locks in. And now we have rear speakers that are wired. So I'm going to take this, reconnect it back on the back of this fender, plug this back in. Now we have a place to hook our rear speaker wires in, but we're not done. There's another step. We actually have a T-harness now. We have 2 individual harnesses that go in the bags. This is going to have the grommets. It's going to give us a disconnect, but we're going to have to run and wire this in now. So you'll notice one side says brake, one side says belt. This is the belt side. Brake side's over there. It's also the same side where your brake lever is as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take this wire under here, run it through this area right under here, bring it out the other side. Let's see, you got to twirl it a certain way. I think I've got it now. Grab a couple zip ties and show you how to secure it. All right, so once we get it out on this side, we're going to run it behind this little frame post here. And you'll see right here from the factory, there's already a zip tie here holding a wire. I want you to take your zip tie, take it through that same holder, bring it around, and go to about where that sticker is that says brake and tighten it down. Take a pair of zip tie, flush cutters, flush cut it. And next we're going to take this wire. We're going to bring it up here. We don't ever want this to have a way to get down to that tire. There's a place here for another zip tie to be run from the factory. Pull it around this pole, cinch it down there. That's going to keep it from ever being able to drop down. Flush cut it. Let's go to the other side. Let's do the same thing again over there. This side is going to be similar, but just a little bit different. We actually have a hole right here that if you bring your hand in under, you can grab this wire with your hand and you can feed it out right down this direction. So what we want to do now, I'm going to go ahead and undo these two bolts and lean this out so I can zip tie and secure it the same way. There's a 13mm front and back of this panel. Once you remove those, this leans out and it gives you really good visibility into here. But I'm going to go ahead and take a zip tie, go through that same holder again. Take our wire, secure it up right about where that sticker is, just like we did the other side. Right where it says belt. Flush cut that one. Now we're going to take this wire, making sure that we've pulled it up and that it is secured by this zip tie. That same area, we don't want to let it hang down. If it gets into the belt, it's going to mess up your rear speaker wires. It's going to make your amp go into protect. You're not going to have sound and you're not going to be happy. So make sure you secure that up correctly and then flush cut it as well. Now we can go ahead and put those two bolts back in the side of this panel. Not much more to go on this rear wiring. Now we're going to take either one of these. They do the same thing. They're both just rear speaker outputs, and we're going to plug one of them into one of these connectors. At that point, I'm just going to lay this wire across, and I like to run a single zip tie around this just to keep it from being loose under the seat. Make sure it stays where I want it, just like so. Now once I get it about there, I'm going to go ahead and flush cut this as well. And we are done with the rear wiring in the back of the bike. At this point, I'm going to put both of my side covers back on. We're going to move on to our bags. We're going to cut in those 6x9 inch cut-in lid kits. We're going to get that installed. We'll put the wiring in the bag, and when we come back, we can simply plug it into these, and our 6x9s are going to be connected. Let's move on with the rest of our install. All right, so if you've watched any of our other videos on how to install a cutting kit in a 24 and up Harley, I want you to forget everything you know about it, because Cicada's got a completely different way, and you're gonna wanna follow along in this video. Now, let's talk about why they've went through these massive changes. First off, they've got two very powerful, heavy 6x9s that they wanted to make sure this was strong enough to hold. But on top of that, they've built all of this where it holds that speaker at an angle to clear that 10-inch subwoofer or mid-bass that you may add in the future. This is a three-piece design. You're going to have a template. We're going to cut it in. But after that, we're going to have a part that goes under the lid, another one that drops in, and that's going to allow you then to mount that speaker in through the top. Do your wiring, get it done, and at the very end, there's going to be a grill that goes on top of that. They're going to install new lid gaskets. We want to seal this lid very tight from the factory. It is not. It's going to give you better overall sound if we can seal this up and make it into a good speaker enclosure. They're also going to include some new straps or the new cloths to go here that'll hold the crossovers when you're doing like the CXK, which is the 6x9 we're putting in as part of this build. So talking about that, we did a huge build on this bike. If you want to watch that entire series, you need to find that playlist on Volunteer Audio's YouTube channel on the 25 CVO ST. It's red in color. We did a full CXK kit with the 2000 watt amp. If you want to follow the whole thing, go there now, check that out, and this will be as part of that as well. Now, as far as harnessing goes, we covered that in that video. This video is just for how to cut and mount the 6x9s into your bag lids. All right, so enough talking. We'll go over all these parts in more depth as we put it in. So let's get our bike lids prepared and get them cut and start putting this together. All right, so the first step before you cut your lid, no matter what cutting kit you're using, you're going to want to tape off the surface with some masking tape to protect against any scratches or your saw as you cut through that template. You don't want it to vibrate and rub and damage that paint. So we're just going to tape off the top, and we're going to be really careful as we do this that we leave our tape nice and flat. We do not want to build any ridges or anything that's going to throw off our template location as we do this. Doing our best to make as few little ridges as possible, but you got to put this tape on here. So you're going to have a few of them. We're going to be very careful as we put our template on that we get it in the right location. And keep this body line right here where we can for sure tell where it's going to go. I've now taped off everywhere that our template sits. That's enough. You don't have to tape beyond that. We're going to go ahead and open that bag, and I'm going to be removing these 2 screws, getting that cloth away, because we're actually going to be cutting through this area. Your new cutting kit is going to have the mounting point for that screw. So you're going to take your T15, just remove these 2 screws. You'll be reusing them later. After we've got that undone, we're just going to close our lid back. All right, so the next step, we're going to take our template, and we're going to make sure that we position it in the correct location on the bag. Now, I want you to be really careful. We're going to have to make sure that our body lines match up, and we're not too far this way or too far this way or this way. Once you get it where it goes, where everything lines up, we're going to put 2 screws through here to hold it in place as we cut this out. Make sure I'm still right where I want to be. All right, so I want you to take a second after you've screwed it in. Go ahead and look at all of these lines and make sure they're matching up with the exact contours and places. We only have one chance to get this right, so look from every angle. Make sure your body lines are lined up with everywhere there's a crease or a bend. Once you know it's right, we can move on to the next step. We're going to be drilling some 5/16 holes in these outside locations that you see outside of here. There's 1, 2, 3 on the outside like that. We're then going to be drilling a slightly larger hole to drop our saw blade in and cut this shape out. All right, so I'm going to take a 5/16 drill bit, and you're going to see that you have a couple holes out here. There's 3 that we're going to go ahead and drill through on our lid. All right, now I'm going to pick one of these locations, and I'm just going to drill a slightly larger hole to be able to drop my saw blade into. This is not your standard jigsaw. This is a Milwaukee hacksaw. It's a 12-volt single-handed sawzall. So with that being said, I'm buying a special blade from them. It's a scrolling metal blade. We're using it in plastic, but it fits into this. It looks like a jigsaw blade, but it fits with a sawzall style base. It gives me better control. I prefer this way. So many of you are going to use other methods. It's okay if there's something you're more comfortable with, but I definitely wouldn't cut your bag lid with a tool you're using for your first time. So find something you're comfortable with, get the right blade, and get this cut out without messing it up. But we're going to follow the outside edge of this, and we're going to cut all the way around. We're just staying in those lines. And understand, as you're cutting through the last couple of these, there's not much holding it in place. You're going to have to make sure it doesn't move as you run out of these little areas that you're cutting through. You're not going to have that rigidity anymore from those screws in the center. So as I get to this point, I'm actually cutting through the place where that cloth bolted in on the other side. So I'll open it up, and if I'm coming through here and that's being a problem, I'll go ahead and just trim and cut this and remove it. Sometimes my blade will cut right through it. In this case, I've hit right in the center. So let's cut that real quick. We'll set a side snips, get it out of our way, and then continue on. In this case, I'll just take something like these side cutters. I'll cut along the bottom edge. Once you do that, you can pretty much just peel it around, and it will rip that plastic and come off. I'll do it on this side as well. At the end, we'll take a sander. I'll show you that, and we'll make sure that it looks really nice and smooth for our gasket to seal. All right, so let's continue around. So now I'm to the point that I only have 2 of these that we've not cut through. Now, it is holding that really well too here, so I'm not really concerned that it's going to move a lot, but I want to be you want to make sure that as you cut through that last one, there's only one, that this doesn't flex around. So just keep an eye on that. Keep your hand on it. All right, so I'm down to that last little section. I'm going to take a sander, I'm going to smooth up these edges just a little bit, and then we'll start bolting some parts together. All right, so now I'm going to take my little DA sander and I'm just going to sand up these edges, make sure they're good and smooth. All right, so you don't have to do much. We're just taking those little sanding marks out, making it good and smooth, or the cut marks out where we start and stop. Now on the underside of the lid, we're going to have this little corner here. Still have some plastic where we cut that out. So let's go ahead and trim that down. There we go. We're good. We're smooth down there. So now our gasket is going to seal and do a good job. I'm just going to check this inner edge, make sure there's not anything as far as burrs. Clean that up. A lot of times I'll go ahead and peel this little edge of this sticker off too, just to make sure that our gasket is sealing to the plastic of the lid and not a paper sticker. All right, so there's a little bag of hardware that says bag number 2. It's got 8 screws. We're going to take 4 of them for now for this part. Little machine screws are Phillips head number 2, and they've already got blue Loctite pre-installed on it. So what we're going to do, and this is a little, if you don't follow along, you're going to think this is backwards. This looks like it would go underneath. This looks like it would go on top, but that is opposite. This is going to actually go underneath our lid into this area. We're going to get it in place, and I'm telling you, there's not a lot of room, but this is very precise fit. You're going to put it in here like this. We're going to then take this part. It goes in from the top. It laps over, and it falls in place. And you're going to see we had to cut that hole very precise because we have this little overlap that fits over that as we go. So now from the other side, you're going to see there are 4 holes that are machine screw holes. Here's one of them. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to get one of them in. Now I'm not going to tighten any of them. We're just going to get them going. All right, so that one is started. I'm going to move on to one of the other ones. Get each one started in place. Do this front one. Okay, that one is pulling in. We got one more back here, and I want to tell you, I've not had any struggle. These lined up absolutely perfect off of that template. I kind of questioned, do I cut the outside? Do I cut the inside? The outside was absolutely perfect because now when you look how close our cut line is to this piece, because this piece drops into that lid. We are so precise. And now we're going to have another grill that goes over this, but it just reaffirms that we cut everything in the exact right place. Now I'm going to tighten all of these down. Normally I would tell you to put some Loctite on them, but it's already there. So I'm going to work my way around. I'm not going to tighten any all the way, but I'm going to pull them all down. And then I'll go back around and do them again because we want to go tight. This is a brass insert or a metal insert inside a plastic. So we don't want to overdo it because you could, if you use like an impact driver, you could break that or strip that out. We're going to do it with hand tools. I've had 3 cups of coffee, so my hands are a little jittery. Let's go ahead and tighten them until they bottom out. You'll feel it stop. I want to look. See this factory gasket, how it's not even sealed in the corner? They're going to send us, they've sent us new gaskets. We'll put those in. I'll show you that to get us a much better seal. All right, so all of those are in. So now, as you see, we have our basket that our speaker is going to mount in is now here. All right, so next step is going to get a little complex depending on what kind of speaker you're using. If you're using the CHK, the horn-loaded coaxial, it's going to be pretty simple. You're just going to drop the speaker in. You're going to bolt it in with the supplied hardware. I'm not doing that. We're using the component set with the separate tweeter and the bridge. So we're going to have to drill a hole for our wire to come through for our tweeter. So I'm going to drop my 6x9 in here. We're not going to mount it yet. I'm going to set the bridge on it. Now this bridge is the 24 CHD TB tweeter bridge. It is mentioned in their directions, but it's a brand new part. It's not been out long, and we're going to have a true component. You're going to get better mid-bass out of this style speaker. That's what I'm going for in this install, but I've got to drill a hole back here, and to determine where that's going to go, I wanted to put my bridge on my 6x9. I'm going to get a little marker. I'm going to mark where I want to drill that hole through for our wire. So I'm going to hold my speaker right over where its mounting holes would be. I'm going to come straight up through here, and I'm going to just mark right where I want that wire to go through. That's not going to stand out a lot to you, but I can see that. Now I want to take a drill bit, just slightly larger than my speaker wire, and I'm going to drill that hole. Now, if you're really worried about making this completely watertight, at the end you would just put a little bit of silicone in that hole where that wire is. All right, so I'm just going to drill a 3/16 hole right where I put my mark. I'm wanting to keep this hole pretty tight. We're going to have to kind of force the wire through, but we want it tight. We don't want a large hole to try to seal later. All right, so now we're going to have to take the wire. If you've got your crossover from your speakers, it came with a little plug that says output to TW for tweeter. I'm going to remove that label, and from inside the bag, I'm now going to have to feed this wire through that hole. So again, wanting it tight, this may not be the simplest thing to pull. And if it's too tight, you may have to, take your drill bit and make this hole just slightly bigger. Take my needle nose, grab the wire. Fingernails are not quite strong enough for this. There we go. Just sliding the wire through this way. So there's a little plug here, and your crossover is going to mount inside of the cloth that goes on here later. So I just want to leave that plug onto that side. Now we're going to open or close the bag lid to get access to this wiring. So the next step, they do not install on this already the correct terminals to go on the tweeter. So we have to do that. But we're going to have to do this in an order that makes sense. Now, you could have done this before you drop this in. I prefer to do it while the bag is holding all of this for me. So I have to now drop this in place. This is going to go through here and back up the other side. This is where our tweeter terminals have to be. So now I'm going to grab our tool and we're going to crimp our ends on to go to our tweeter. Then we'll mount our tweeter, we'll bolt it in, and I'll show you how to wire management this as well. All right, so inside the box with your speakers, you did receive some terminals to crimp on this. Now, I showed you in the beginning of this bike, if you're watching the whole install, a different tool, but I'm going to use a compression style tool to do this one. It actually ratchets as it goes down, but it's got little terminals that these drop into. So I'm just going to drop my pins in. And I'm going to line up my speaker wire with it. I'm going to put my wire in, making sure that the tip is coming all the way through. Let's get it where it needs to be. Now here where I can see it. Now we're going to crimp it. I want to check. I want to make sure this one was tight enough. It looks like it did a good job. I do have a couple options on here that are a little tighter, so I'm probably going to go down to the next one and go just a little bit more with it. All right, so here we are. Every time you go a little tighter, it can get stuck in there. So that one is on. I'm going to do the same thing on our other terminal. All right, so I got the wire in the right depth. Now we're just going to crimp it down. You'll see that actually crimps around our speaker shield, or the plastic portion, and that terminal at the same time. Now, if you don't have this tool, you could absolutely get this crimped around with a little pair of pliers and solder it instead of buying the tool. I like having the right version. They're also going to give you some little clear covers that are going to go over this after the fact, so I'm going to go ahead and work those on as well. Let's get this on the right direction here. Yep, the round one goes that way. Sliding these over, just protecting the end from shorting on anything. Do the same thing on the other one. All right, so both of our terminals are now crimped. They're now ready to go on our tweeter. So let's grab our tweeter. In this case, we're using the 3/4 inch tweeter. They have a 1/2 inch option as well. And if you did the 1/2 inch, you're going to use an adapter. You're not going to see us use, because we're using the full size tweeter in here. This is the RR075T tweeter. So now at this point, we're going to take and we're going to plug these in. The wire that has the stripe on it is going to be your negative. We're going to face these toward the middle of the speaker, like so. Working it on until it's all the way on. Now we're going to do the positive side with the solid wire without the stripe. Now I'm going to position this tweeter so that those wires are pointed toward the rear. So it's only going to go in this one way. Now we have 4 Phillips screws, and I'm going to go ahead and drop in here, and then we'll put our portion on the back. It's a ring that those are going to thread into. So I'm just going to stick these Phillips screws through, just a couple of them. That's just going to just make sure that I'm coming through these holes already, and we're lined up. These stamp brackets can be moved around just a little bit. Now your tweeter came with this ring, and it's got this place here for your wire to run through. So I'm going to stand this up, getting access to the back. As I come down with this, though, I'm moving my speaker wires toward that little gap, so that as we come down, it's going to hold those wires to where they don't come in and hit our woofer. This is very, very important that you line this up correctly. We don't want to compress those wires and short them out, but we definitely want it to hold those in place for us. So now we're going to see if we can line up that ring. Feels like we've already started that one. We push this up and start the second one. Again, paying attention to that speaker wire as we go. All right, so that one is started. Now I'm just, again, double check those wires. Looks like we're good. We've got clearance. Let's set it back down. I'm going to put the other 2 screws in now. Okay, so those are all tight. Now we're going to grab, you've got a couple zip ties that came with this wiring. I'm actually going to do this from underneath because I don't want to see the top of that zip tie. Being careful not to let this metal rest on the painted surface of my bag. I definitely don't want to create any scratches, but we're going to put the zip tie in and then flush cut it. Now we're going to do that again on the other side of it, all the way over in here. So from underneath, zip tie around the wire, back through the other hole. These are a lot of steps, but they're easy steps. This isn't something, if you just take your time, you can do this. I'm going to look at my wire on this side. Make sure it's good and straight. It is. I'm going to flush cut this one as well. So as you see, that's got our tweeter where our wire, we're going to feed the excess wire back into the bag here in a second. I've still got to put a gasket on the 6x9, and we've still got to get our hardware lined up to bolt that in. But as you see, the tweeter's mounted, the wiring is in the bag. I'm going to lay something up here just to make sure we don't scratch it. I'm going to set this out of the way, put my gasket on, get my hardware together, and get ready to bolt it all in together. All right, so if you look here, I put a little protector here, laid my tweeter and my bridge over. I've got my 6x9 over on the table. I'm going to go ahead and take one of the mini gaskets they've supplied. They give you a bunch of these. You're not going to have to use them all. And I'm going to peel the backing off of it and put it on our speaker. We just want to make sure if any water gets into this through rain that it doesn't get around the speaker, because this is going to be a watertight install. We should not have any problems with washing or rain. Our woofer is completely solid, so no water is going to pass through that. We've got gaskets on all of the cut kit. This is my favorite way to mount a speaker in a lid is a cut kit. It seals better, it's angled better, everything about it's going to give us better sound. But let's go ahead and install this gasket just to ensure that. And it just goes on the speaker. Just make sure that you line it up where we can still get our screws through the holes to mount it. Phone maybe stretch out a little bit, but you can work it down there. So our gasket's installed now. So we're going to go back to the bike. We're just going to drop it in, getting ready or preparing for our holes. Now you want to make sure that your wiring terminals are facing the center of the bag. So we're going to drop that in that arrangement. We're going to set our bridge back on. Let me grab our other hardware now and show you what it's going to take to actually bolt this into this lid kit. We know this isn't going to affect the CXK or the CHX speaker. So we're going to use the shorter hardware. There were some shorter bolts that came with the cutting kit to mount our bridge and our speaker. You're going to see that it comes with some little sealing washers. I want you to put those on each one of your bolts. And then on the other side, we're going to have a lock nut. So the shorter bolts, each one with a washer. I'm going to go ahead and get 4 of those prepared and drop those in. Then we'll go underneath and we'll hold those nuts as we tighten these up. So dropping each one of these through now just for alignment. So now I'm going to open my lid, being careful not to go too far, just enough that I can start these on the back of each one of these. Anytime I have a nylon lock nut, I'm not going to use a drill to tighten these up. If you do that, it tends to overheat the nylon and it can cause you to actually lock up and strip that bolt. So we don't want to do that. So I'm going to get a little wrench, and then I'm going to use a screwdriver by hand to tighten these up. All right, so the hardware is going to use a 7mm wrench to hold your nut, and then a number 2 Phillips screwdriver to tighten down that screw. I'm going to get all of these pretty close to tight, but not tight till I get them all the way down, because I don't want to put it in a bind and then have to try to twist the speaker around. So we're going to get it close. And being careful, I'm not opening the lid all the way yet. We don't have our cloth on to keep it from swinging all the way over, so we definitely don't want to let the bag lid fall and scratch the side of the bag. All right, this is my last one. So as I bring it in, I'm going to go ahead and tighten it down because our speaker does look to be in a good position here. All right, so we have all of our bolts in. The speaker's mounted good and tight. I think it looks great. Now we're going to move on. Let's go ahead and put our grill on, and then we'll get into wiring on the inside of the bag. All right, so we're ready to put our grill on. You do have a bag of screws. I think it was hardware bag number 1. You're going to have some long and some short coarse threaded Phillips screws. They're going to hold the grill on. You're going to use 3 short and 1 long. And the long one's going to go into this position so it doesn't come out into this mesh part. We'll show you that again as we get inside. You're going to have 3 little nubs that stick out that we need to line up with these holes. The 4th one just drops in over here, but it's not as crucial that we line it up at this moment. But let's line up all of these into their holes, drop them down in where they go, and then push down. Now I'm going to open it up, and we're going to start by putting these screws in one at a time. We go ahead and do the front ones. Again, I always start the screws, and I don't tighten anything all the way up until they're all started, just in case we need to flex it a little this way or that way to get that to start. This is the one long one is going to go toward the hinge of your lid. We put the long screw in, start tightening it down. You'll hear it as it falls into place. This actually snaps in all the way around. It's really nice. Let's keep going tighter with this one. Looks good. It's pulled down all the way around. And now we have our grill installed. All right, so now I'm getting ready. Our grill's on. We're going to get into the wiring side. And Cicada is going to send you some new lid retaining cloths here. So when you open it up, it's going to say their logo on it. But on top of that, it's going to hold the crossover to our speaker. Now I've got it held in my hand a specific way. We actually have part of the wiring that says input from amp. I have taken that and I am pointing it toward this side of my cloth. I want to go in toward really the center of the bag. The other side, I have my output to my mid and my tweeter, and there's just so much wiring here. I want to try to do as much wire management as I can before I get in there. So I've got this wire is actually looped back to give me a shorter distance. This is my tweeter. It's not very long. This is the mid. It's a little longer, and I can add more zip ties later if need be. But at this point, I'm going to throw a zip tie around this crossover in 2 places to hold this wire. And we may add another one later, but this is just to get us in our cloth and show you how that works. So let's go ahead and secure these. Always flush cut your zip ties. If you don't, later one of them's going to cut you and you're going to be mad about it. All right. Or somebody else in the future. If you're that guy, flush cut your zip ties so it doesn't cut me. All right. So this back side of this is really cool. So they've got a little pouch for our crossover. We're going to open it on up. And what we're going to do is we're just going to slide the crossover into here. As we slide it through on this end, I'm just going to fold this up and Velcro it back. It just kind of contains all of this in this pouch. Same thing on the other side. We're just going to fold it up with our wires running out this little slot. So at this point, we have a contained crossover in underneath this cloth. We're going to bolt it in now, and then we'll go and plug everything in where it goes. Do a little bit more wire management. Now, you will find they're going to give you a new metal brace for where it bolts at the hinge, and that particular part has got this for your wire to run under. They want to retain that wire, keep it nice and neat, and they're going to do that with this metal strap, but you need that recess and make sure you run it there so you don't pinch and damage that wire. So essentially where this wire runs back this way, our other wire is going to run up and under and attach. Now as we open and close, that wire is never going to move around and get caught in that hinge area. All right, so before I move on, we're not going to do any more cutting now, so I'm going to go ahead and vacuum and clean this bag out. All right, I'll do another wipe down later, but that should be good enough for now. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a T15 and remove 2 of the hinge bolts, just the outside 2, to get our cloth undone. Now we're going to take our Cicada crossover and we're going to make sure that it is positioned in this cloth where when we open it, we see that Cicada logo. I may do a little bit more management of this wiring as we get everything mounted just to make it look a little cleaner. Let's go ahead and work this screw through, get it out the other side of this cloth. I'm just going to start these for now. I've got to run a wire up here in a few minutes, so I'll start them, but I'm not going to go very tight yet. All right. All right, so next we're going to take the little metal insert out of our factory cloth and we're going to transfer it to the other end of this, just sliding it through. This one's not going to have that hump in it because it's not going to be needed. This cloth being new, you may have to actually spin that screw through the cloth. So we'll do that like so. Just going to put that second screw through. Get it lined up. All right, so let's go ahead and get these where they go. All right, so now at this point, our bag is going to not go too far. We don't have to worry about scratching anything now. So I can do a little bit more wire management. So we have our tweeter. We ran it out earlier. This is going to be really simple. We're just going to plug these two connectors together. Reach under here so you can see it. Just like so. And then you're going to use a Phillips screwdriver to connect these two wires. One of these is marked with a plus. That's going to be this one out here. And that's going to go to your solid wire, not the striped. Now, always at the end of every install, we're going to do a polarity test and make sure nothing is off. But we're going to do it the correct way first and then swap it if there's an issue. There's the positive. Let's go ahead and hook up our negative. This is going to be the striped wire. I'm always going to go ahead and double check and tighten this screw just a little bit more as well. All right, so zip ties are your friend. You're going to want to make sure that you've took any excess wire and go back into this pocket. But I'm going to zip tie both my tweeter and my mid wires together here. Just to make sure they don't have a way to come in contact with that woofer while it's moving. All right. Now we're going to drill a hole in the side of the bag for our speaker wires to run in. Once it runs over, it's going to come underneath here and connect to our other terminals here that are coming off of our crossover. And actually the back side of this little pocket has a hole that we could probably also run this through. So I may drop it out there. But let me get a 5/8 unibit or hole saw, and we're going to drill a 5/8 hole right where our speaker wire goes in. All right, so when I drill my hole for my speaker wire, I'm going to look at this latch point, look at this position here where it bolts to the frame, and I'm going to come right between here and I'm going to drill my hole. All right, so that is my 5/8 hole. All right, so when you buy from Volunteer Audio and you get one of our full systems, we're going to include full plug-and-play harnessing, and that is part of what this is. So it's already going to have a grommet on the end of it. We're going to feed it into this hole from the outside. And we're going to take this rubber and make sure that it gets all the way in there as well, pushing it through as we go. Just like that, we have our grommet installed, we have our wire in here. This wire is going to run around the front, and then it's going to come around and it's going to go right up in behind here to be connected. So next we're going to clean and install a few zip tie bases to hold this wire as we go. All right, so now we're going to take some zip tie bases. We're going to use 4 of these per side. They're going to be included in your kit, and we're going to stick one here at the front of the bag. We're just coming over right where this harness would go. I'm going to put another one right over in here. Working our way around here, we're going to put another right there. And right as we get over toward this hinge, we're going to put another one in this place. Now, if you were doing a coaxial speaker, the wire would just come up and plug into the speaker. Us having to cross over, we're going to come under this strap to get to that. So, earlier I did not tighten this up all the way because I wanted to be able to position that wiring. And so I'm going to start, let's start by zip tying these first. And I'm just going to get as much as I can into this corner. Let's do another one here. always facing those little zip ties down. All right, so now I want you to cut each one of those zip ties. Go ahead and flush those in. Now I want to take part of this strap loose again. One side. That's going to allow me to pull this out enough to run that wire up and under. I'm going to line it up with the middle, that little divot they've got in there. I'll start tightening this one back up. I'm going to verify that my wire is right in the middle of that, which it is. Now I'm going to go on down and tighten it some more. Like so. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these top ones. I want you to be able to see what I'm doing better. So let me take these back out. Just so we can lay this over and you can see what is happening. So I'm going to take this wire that says input from amp. I'm going to bring it down here and I'm going to go through this other hole. You notice they've got a hole right here in the middle of this mesh. All right, so I'm going to remove that sticker. And now I have a positive and a negative. Our negative is going to have the stripes on it. I'm going to hook it to our black terminal. Now, if you see that your terminal is loose, we're going to take a pair of pliers of some sort and we're just going to squeeze these tighter to make sure they don't come loose in the future. Now the striped one goes to the black one. Much better. It's not going to come loose now. Solid one goes to the red one. Now I'm going to take a few seconds and I'm going to pull a little bit of this wiring in here. Let's try to make it a little bit more hidden. Finishing up this little Velcro job on the end. I think that looks good. All right, so just like that, our crossover is mounted, our wiring is done, our bag opens and closes as we would want, and there's no way that our other things we put in our bag are going to now interfere with that wiring. Now, if you were doing the sub install, it would be over here, and we would try to run that speaker wire in about the same place to come into our subwoofer with the same style disconnect plug. All right, I think we would have very little left. I want to tell you about a couple things that we did not do. When you buy your 6x9s, there's a good chance it came with this baffle. This is only for certain scenarios with a subwoofer and a very high-powered subwoofer where it would damage that 6x9. We are not going to use this baffle without that specific scenario, because if the baffle's installed, you're going to get no bass out of this 6x9, and we want to get a good full tone. So do not use that baffle. Secondly, they're going to give us, and they already gave us, a piece of sound dampening material that could go in the lid. Now, if you read the directions, they tell you got to take all of this out to install that 6x9. I did not have to do so, as you saw in the video, but they gave you a piece of sound dampening material to do both sides. It's so big that it's not going to fit without a little bit of trimming. So we're going to take a pair of scissors. We're going to bend this where it's going to fit. We're going to measure it out, and I'm going to trim and cut just the area to do this back section. That's all that we need out of this. It doesn't take a lot to take that vibration out of that lid. So we're going to measure this out and we're going to trim it down to fit in here. That kept us from taking all of this out, and on this particular bike, the screw for the handle is on the inside. So once this is mounted, you have no access to get back to it. So this just makes more sense to us to do it this way. So I'll trim this next, we'll get it installed, and then we're going to be replacing the gasket on the lid. They did send us a brand new gasket that is a thicker, better mounting gasket to seal up better. So we'll get to that here shortly as well. All right, so I took this piece of sound deadening material and I cut it to shape to fit in there. Just took my scissors, cut it pretty quickly. Now I'm just going to peel the backing. It's sticky, but it's not so sticky that you can't rework it if you get it a little off center. So let me get it a little better, just like so. All right, so now that we've got that installed, we're going to move on to that lid gasket. All right, so I guess really the last step we're going to have before we move on to our other side is installing this new gasket. And it is a lot thicker gasket than what we originally had. So let me get it opened up. We'll look at it in comparison to what was on it. So this is the new thicker gasket. It's very similar to the older. If you'll compare it, it's a lot thicker than what is on there. And they're going to actually have us do this in a little different way too. This one is designed where it kind of fits into a groove. We're going to actually go right above that groove as we stick it on. Always, these things have been rolled up. It's a little cold today. I'm going to stretch it just a little bit to make sure I've got plenty of length, because a lot of times they will shrink as they're in that package. And now I'm going to move over here to the bag, and we're going to start pulling this original gasket off. So it's probably not on there real well, as I've seen on most of them. Look at that. From the factory, there's not much stick in it. There's not much seal in it. It's really a good idea to put one that's going to do better than that. So that quick, we just pulled it off because the glue just isn't great that they use factory. I'm going to go ahead and take some isopropyl alcohol and rub this edge. Probably not needed on a brand new bike, but we're going to do it anyways just to make sure that we get the best adhesion. All right. So we're going to take our new gasket, start peeling this little paper that exposes our adhesive here. And it's a little wet here, so I'm waiting. It's drying up now. We just got dry. On this particular bike, they don't put any of this on the metal hinge like they do in the older ones. But we're going to start right at that hinge. And we're going to just stick it right to the outside edge like so as we go around. Staying about where the original one was. And you'll notice as we go around here, this gasket does have a little lip that I'm just dropping right where the old one was. But what we're sticking to is actually the outside edge, not the lip. This is good because the gasket that was on here factory was really falling off already. Always good to upgrade this. It's nice that they include it. Now from the factory, it did not actually go into this area. I want it to, so I'm going to make sure this seals better by running it all the way to the other side. But before I peel that, I'm going to pull it over. I'm going to judge where it ends, mark it with my finger, and then I'm going to cut it at that location. All right, so now I'll peel off that backing and get this stuck all the way down in there where it should be going. All right, so our gasket's installed. You see just how easy that was. All right, it looks good. Now, you're going to find that when you have a new gasket and you go to shut this lid, it's going to be much harder to shut the first couple times. And we're going to push down on that, making sure everything's lined up, and we're going to seal it. We're going to let it sit for a while because that gasket is going to conform to that new shape as it's sealed up. This side's done. I'm not going to bore you with doing the whole other side. If you followed along doing this install, you can definitely pause, rewind, watch these steps over and over as you need. But you can do both sides, I'm sure, after you've done the first. All right, so I've got both of our bags done. We cut in our 6x9 lid kits. We've installed our speakers, our tweeters, our wiring on both sides. All the wiring is done as well, as you saw on the one side just now on both. So we're going to go to the bike. We're going to get these put on. So let me show you about that. Let's grab our retainers. Now we already ran that rear wiring earlier, so this is going to be really simple because we're essentially just putting the bag back on the bike. Now set your bag in place. Take that wire that we ran earlier and just plug it into our quick disconnect. Pushing it underneath where this little mount is and thread these back in. Those new gaskets are really tight, so we're just going to push down in the middle the first couple times as we shut it. Those will conform over the next few days and get much easier to open and close our bags, but now it's sealing correctly. So let's move on. Let's go up to the front. Let's get our fairing on, get our grills on, and last we'll put our fuse back in and get our seat on. All right, so as we continue back together, we are not going to actually fully install our grill, but we do need to take our grills up to our fairing. We need to route the wiring up here through the top, and we need to plug it in. So I'm just going to kind of set it in place. We're not going to snap it in place yet. Kind of set the little legs here where it won't fall off. We're going to plug it in. Now we're going to have to leave it loose because we do have a couple screws that go behind the grill before we can snap it into all of its places. All right, same thing on the other one. We're just going to take this little black plug, feed it right up here through the corner into our fairing area, and then take the plug that we ran earlier out with our amp and plug in our tweeter. That's what came out the end of that speaker pod from our crossover to protect those tweeters from the bass. All right, so next we're just going to take our outer fairing, slide it back on. Now I've got side turn signal fog lights that we added from Custom Dynamics that I've got to go above that probably won't be in your way. I've got to make sure that I come out and clear those. All right, so on your side where your fairing goes, there are these little grooves that have to line up with notches on the inner as we go in. So we're going to push all of this in, try to get it lined up. All right, so we're going to take these two bolts that we removed earlier from the top. I want to go ahead and start those on each side. Pulling that in, but again, over here, we're going to make sure all of this is lined up so that it pulls in correctly. Same thing on the other side. Start the bolt, and then as you go in, just make sure that all of these things are lining up properly on the side. At this point, one grill at a time, I'm just going to take my grill loose. I'll turn this so you can see it a little better. Just going to lean my grill out while it's still plugged in. Hang it there. And we'll put our bolt in out here to pull all of this in. We did do that sound skin, so our fairing is a lot tighter than it was on those speaker pods, which is the idea. That's what we wanted. But this is going to help pull all of that in and line everything back up really nice. Now that I have that in, I'm going to go ahead and snap this grill in. These 2 feet are going to have to go in first, and then you line both clips up. This does take some pressure, pushing this around, making sure that it is lined up correctly because there's some rubber gaskets in place. Once you've got them lined up, you push them in and they're going to clip in. Yep, that one's in. Let's go ahead and do the other side. Again, we're just going to spin this grill around, line up those lower feet. All right, so now on this side of the fairing, we have 2 bolts that went straight down. If you see there's a big gap or these are not lining up, check here at your headlight. There's a bulge on the headlight that lines up with this front fairing. If you're above it, they're not going to want to line up. You may have to push it down. Ours is all lined up, so I'm going to go ahead and put these in and tighten those. Same thing on the other side. Now we had 2 longer bolts that we took off the lower side. All right, tighten that one down. We're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. All right, so now we're going to take this trim that went under our windshield and put it on. It's just going to set in place like that. Next, we'll take our trim around our vent, snap it back in as well. Now, when you put this piece on, pay attention. Look here. So there's a little tab that has to come over that to line up. If you don't line that up right, you're going to have something that doesn't fully made up. So just double check there, making sure it's lined up. If not, just pull it out, put it back in the correct way. On to our mounts for our windshield on each side. Let's go ahead and put those 6 bolts in, 3 on each side. We're still using that T25 Torx. Does pretty much almost everything on this bike. Go and put the other side on. So now we're just going to take our windshield, slide it into these lower feet. They're going to line up with the grooves in the front of the windshield. And then take those 4 bolts we removed earlier. Make sure you have those little rubber bushings that are going to isolate the windshield from rubbing on the bolt. A little rubber gasket goes on. Make sure you put those in the right place. You could have a taller aftermarket windshield. If so, sometimes this hardware is different. But just put it back the way it was when you removed it earlier. All right, so let's move to the back. Let's get our seat on now. All right, so before we put our seat on, just so you can see it better, and I can too, I'm going to reinstall that 60 amp fuse that we removed at the beginning. So I'm just going to pull out on this side panel enough to get down to it. Now you could have the bag off, but there's really no need to have to take it all the way off. Line my fuse up with this hole, press it in. Now we're going to snap that little cap back over, press our side panel in. All right, so now we're going to reinstall our seat. I know at this point you're thinking, I know how to do this. Keep watching because we're going to do setup in the radio here in a second. and I'm going to show you how to get the radio set up for your new system, making sure that everything in the speaker configuration is right before you move on to listening to it. I'll also go over how to do a polarity test on it. All right, let's put this little piece of carbon fiber on behind the seat. All right, so we're back together with our bike. Let's move on into the radio and let me show you speaker configuration. All right, so now we're to the good part. We're about to get to hear it. First, we got to go into our radio though. Get your bike powered up, get the radio on. We're going to hit these 3 lines here and bring up our menu and go to settings. From there, I want you to go to sound, and we're going to have to go in and configure that we have rear speakers and that we have everything set up correctly. So this bike from the factory had the Rockford speakers, but it only had front. And if you go to speaker status, you'll see we only see front speakers. You go to speaker configuration. We're going to go ahead and select stage 3 for the front and rear, and it's going to say start test. When we press start test, look here, and we're going to hit OK. It's going to tell you that the speaker's making noise. It will not be making noise at this time. So I want you to press the left front, the right front, what is the left middle and right middle speakers. These are subwoofers. We're not going to touch those. It now says we're complete, and it wants us to turn the bike off. So turn your bike off. Now wait 60 seconds, and then we'll come back, turn it back on, and verify that it is set correct. All right, so now we've got our radio rebooted back up after that 60 seconds. We're going to go back into our settings, and we're going to go to sound, and I want you to go back now to speaker setup. Here you're going to see volunteer audio powered by SeirenHD. We've already got a custom tune in specifically for these Cicada speakers, this amplifier. It's all tuned. We do that hard part before you get it, but you can see that it's seeing us here. We can now go to speaker status, and you're going to see front and rear speakers. And if we go to speaker configuration, we're going to see that all of this is selected stage 3, and it no longer says to do the test. So let's back out of here. I'm going to show you a couple more things that you need to set. So equalizer, there are a bunch of EQ options inside of this radio. HD signature will by far be your loudest setting. Now you're not going to need it as loud probably as that goes. So you can select any of the preset EQs, and they are going to actually be changing the EQ settings in our DSP, and it's going to allow you to tweak that sound in. You can use a custom EQ. If you decide to do that, absolutely check out volunteeraudio.com. Go to their install resource section and look at the chart that I've made on how to set the custom EQ for this radio. It's going to be very, very helpful for that. Another thing you want to do, because we're using the Volunteer Audio SeirenHD interface, auto speed volume is going to work. I want you to turn that on, number 4. If you go to auto volume 4, this radio is louder than if you leave it off. It also is going to adjust your volume every 5 miles an hour all the way to 80 miles an hour, up and down automatically. It's going to make you very happy because you're going to not have to constantly touch that volume button. It works perfect, and it's a feature you want to have on to have the best sound. So this is all the setup you need to know beyond making sure your phone is correctly set up. We have videos, again, at volunteeraudio.com that show you how to make sure your phone settings are right. So if you have sound check on or audio normalization on in your phone will be low on output. We did not tune this for a phone that is incorrect. So you do want to correct those things in your phone. If you need help, you can call our tech support at 1-844-30-AUDIO. We can help you there as well. Done with setup. I'm going to connect my phone up now. We're going to do a quick polarity test. I'll show you that. We'll talk about it, and then we'll listen to the bike and see what it sounds like. All right, so now we're going to talk about polarity. You got a tool like this with your system from Volunteer Audio. The last step is playing a polarity test track and making sure that all of our speakers are in phase together. This gives us our best mid-bass. Actually, when they're out of phase, you have no mid-bass. So this is going to make your sound awesome. It's going to make sure it's right. And even if you think, I did it right, there's no way I messed it up, Harley's inconsistent in their wiring. So even though you've done it correctly, they can still be out of phase. So I've got my phone connected to our radio via Bluetooth. I'm going to go to YouTube, and I'm going to search for polarity test. When you do that, you're going to find a video from Volunteer Audio. All right, so this is the Volunteer Audio polarity test. When you see the screen and you get it playing, you're going to get some little clicks and pops out of your speakers. Can you hear them? All right, so at that point, we're going to be taking this tool, and we're going to hold it in front of each speaker, not the tweeter, but the actual woofer, and we're going to hold in on this button. All right, so you're going to get a reading like you just saw. That was 3 red flashes, 1 green. We're going to do that on all of them and make sure they match. Let's do our front. All right, right, so as you see, I just checked all 4 speakers. I don't want to check the tweeter, I want to check the woofer. They all match. If you were to have one that does not match, all you're going to do is reverse the speaker wires on that speaker. If you're in an install that it's much harder to get to the fairing ones than the rear, and let's say your rear are opposite from the front, change the easier ones to get to. We just want them all to match to get the best sound. So our polarity's good. It's time to get a copyright-free track and listen to this together and see what it sounds like. Now, we're not allowed to play just any song we want, so we're going to use Epidemic Sound. We're going to load something up that's going to be very dynamic, but I want to tell you, you have no idea what this sounds like through a YouTube video. It's going to sound good to you, and I hope you have a nice set of headphones or a home audio system to play it through, but nothing compares to hearing it in person. So I want to invite you, come to Volunteer Audio, listen to our demo bikes. Give me a call. I'll make sure and set aside whatever time is needed and make sure I'm available when you get here. So call us at 1-844-30-AUDIO and come listen to the bikes in person. We'll let you hear the different system options and make sure it's the right one for you. But now let's see if we can do the best we can to let you hear it through YouTube. So you probably should have had your earplugs in while you're listening to that with me. That is loud. It is so loud. It's very, very, very clear. With that A to B interface, with its onboard DSP and the tuning we've got, you're getting a lot of mid-range and mid-bass while you're getting a lot of very clear highs that aren't overly bright. It's tuned where it sounds really, really good while it's louder than your ears can really handle at full volume, which is what we need to get over the wind, the engine, the exhaust, and everything at those very, very fast highway speeds. 80 miles an hour plus, you're going to hear this no problem. So as you've seen through this install, this isn't a hard job. Now it's long, there were a lot of steps, but I took you through a lot of easy processes, and the hard parts we've already done here at Volunteer Audio. I've already set your gains, I've already tuned your DSP, I've already wired your harnesses so that you can follow along and you and I together can put this system in your bike. Now don't forget, you also get free lifetime tech support from Volunteer Audio. So along with this video series, if you get stuck, if you need help, you give us a call and we will help you. We've done this install and we know what you're going through and we'll help you through that process. If you're looking for the right system for your bike, if you need help finding one, we'll look at your bike, your build, your budget. Just give our sales team a call at 1-844-30-AUDIO. We'll help you put together that perfect system for you. Make sure you get the right system the first time. We don't want to waste any money. We don't want to do things twice. We're here to help, so give us a call. Tell me what you think about the bike, what you think about this audio system. Comment below and let me know what you think. If you have questions, also leave those there. I'll be quick to answer those. So like this video, subscribe to Volunteer Audio on YouTube, follow us on Facebook for the latest in Harley audio. We're going to show you new products as they come out, how to use them, how to install them, and we're going to make sure that you're well informed to get the right part the first time. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, God bless.